All right. So, thank you all for being here. Thanks for giving up your Saturday morning to join us. Welcome to the situational awareness training. My name is Jeff. If you don't know me, I head up the safety ministry, and I work directly under Todd Franks, who organized this whole thing. So thank you, Todd. Thank you, Anna, for breakfast, and Corey for helping out with that. Yeah, I can't say enough. Thank you for being here. I want to share a quick story about why I think this is really important. So 2 weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had family prayer night, okay? And it was on a Tuesday night, and you know, my wife and sons were in the auditorium, and man, we just had a great time. We were worshiping the Lord together as a family. We were praying together. We had a great time, man. We were laughing, and at one point in time, I was really just lost in the moment, and man, we were just having an awesome time, and then service was over, and I walk outside, and there were 3 mighty men who were standing outside in the cold, and they were serving the body, and we were all able to safely just fellowship together because there were men and women who were taking the time to lay down their lives to be vigilant so that we could do that. And I thought, man, what a worthwhile ministry to be a part of at whatever level. So for those that do that on a regular basis, be it Connections or Safety or the Kidtown ministry or whatever, man, it is such a worthwhile ministry to be a part of, just allowing God to move in this place without distraction, without fear. I've heard it said, and I don't want to take up too much time, so I've heard it said that these are uncertain times, and I want to say that these are absolutely certain times. So 1 Peter 5:8 says that the devil is a roaring lion, roaming about seeking whom he may devour. And so there's no question, man. There's statistic after statistic that these are certainly dangers and evils out there that are attacking our churches. So thank you for being here. I'd like to introduce our speaker. Okay. Josh Coleman. Okay, I looked your name up on the internet. So he is the founder of It's Sheepdog.
It's Shepherding Sheepdog.
Shepherding Sheepdog. Yeah, and so man, he's gonna just share his experience. So you know his business kind of started out of necessity. He was a safety team guy, and there just weren't resources for him that he thought he needed, and so he kind of went out and got them and trained himself, and now he's doing that for churches. So man, if you would, Josh, come on up, bro.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry, before we get started, we gotta pray, man.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this time. Lord, God, thank you for making a space for us to worship. And God, thank you for the work that you did on the cross, God. And I pray that we don't take that for granted. But God, right now, right here, Lord, I pray that we would be vigilant, be sober. And God, just open our hearts and our minds to let us hear what you would have for us. And God, please use this time to train us. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, thanks, Todd, for that. So a little bit about myself and how I got to be here. My first introduction to anything security basis was 2003. I joined the Navy, and shipboard security, very basic entry, just your new guy stuff. And then when I got out of the Navy, I started working for Amtrak and then public transportation, and that's where I got my first real taste of the public and how unpredictable they can be, and used a lot of the stuff that I got taught in the Navy on what to look for with the way people act and whatnot, and served me better than I thought it would have dealing with the public and public transportation. And then I did that for 12 or 14 years or so. And then I moved to Arkansas, got with the church. They started up a security team, got with them, and started to help the guys that I was standing next to. I'd say, oh, hey, that guy, is carrying this, because our church doesn't allow anybody but security members to carry. And we were trying to start enforcing that. And so I was able to pick out who was carrying a gun and who wasn't. And they were asking me how I knew. And I had a hard time teaching them. I didn't know what words to use and all. So I started finding books, reading up on how to actually explain what I'm seeing. And a couple of those guys said, hey, why don't you start something for us? So I started a little training deal for my team. And then I got told, hey, more people need this. And so I built a bigger one, and here I am doing it as you guys. I don't advertise anything. He found me on, that's it. That's my advertisement. If somebody finds me, they find me. I was like, if this is something God wants me to do, then God can bring the people to it, and I'm not going to put any emphasis on it. The one thing I want to make clear is nothing I talk about or try to talk to you about, I don't want to instill any fear in anybody. This isn't something, we don't need to live paranoid lives, afraid of the boogeyman around every corner. That's not how it is in real life. It's not what I'm trying to get through to people. So with that, I think they hand you some handouts with the resources stuff, guys. Those are the books that I've read. There is no certification, or there's no class. You can go, all those books that are written are by people that have doctorate level degrees in human behavior and all, but really what we use in our everyday life, there's just no certification, there's no class on what to do. So I guess with that, we'll get started. The thing I want to start with is how we're training and what we're training for. How many people are actually on the security team that are in this room? Okay, sweet. So one of my big things, we're going to go over some terms. Maybe you guys have heard them. I hope you have. But the goals by the end of this training are that we become more situationally aware, and you just know what you're looking for more. Instead of just watching somebody, you actually you have intent and are looking for specific things. To have a better understanding of what deadly or lethal force is or means and when to use it. I speak pretty broadly on this because I do travel to different states, and different states do have minor differences, but when it comes to the law, those minor differences are the difference between jail and not jail. So I don't like to get real. If somebody here, I guarantee you guys should know Missouri state laws better than I do. I did a quick read up on them. They mirror Arkansas very closely, but I just don't like to get super specific on that. Ensure that our moral and spiritual beliefs are maintained. That's the ending one. And then to make smart training decisions. And you guys doing something like this are already kind of starting down that road of looking for different avenues. Do you guys think you have the advantage over the bad guys? Or do you think the bad guys have the advantage? Like legit.
The bad guys have the advantage because they can surprise you.
Yeah.
We're a trusting people,
Yeah.
but you have to be aware. You have to constantly be aware.
Yeah. Well, hopefully by the end of this, your opinion of that changes, because you guys actually have the advantage. This is your home field. You know who's supposed to be here. You know who's supposed to be where, when they're supposed to be there. So the bad guy's going to look out of place real quick. Also, the big advantage that churches have is because you're not looking for a certification or looking to check a box in the state level. The security team I was on, we were actually state licensed security guards, which that really crippled us because we had to follow their training protocols. Well, that's for law enforcement. We're not law enforcement. So it really hampered us. So for you guys that aren't doing that, your avenue for what you want to train on is endless. You don't have to look for, I haven't seen or looked real close if In Arkansas, there's a company that's called Church Security Safety. That's their business name. And I looked it up and I took one of their classes, and all it was an advanced concealed carry class. Didn't have a lick to do with church. They throw the church stuff up there to draw stuff in. But if there's something that you guys want to learn about, man, gloves are off. There's no restrictions to you. And that's what those books, that's where I picked this stuff up on. Those books, and I left a brief description in there, so if there is something that I cover that you want to deep dive into, those are the books to do it. And I don't have the time to read 9 books, whatever it is on that list. So some of the terms that I want to go over is, and my big thing with this is words matter. Right? I'm sure your pastor, when he's up here preaching, you talk about the Word of God, you don't really butter that up. It is what it is. A lot of the times when we're training, we like to muddy the words up because it either makes us feel good, doesn't make us feel weird, we don't want to be that person. So here's the definition of training. This is literally out of the Webster's Dictionary. It's the act, process, or method of one that trains. Or B, the skill, knowledge, or experience acquired by one that trains. Now the word practice. Carry out or apply, or to perform or work at repeatedly so as to become proficient. Guys, training is only the tip of the iceberg. I can give you all the information in the world, but if you're not going to practice it on your own, you're going to max out too quick. And there's no trainer out there that can make you do it. They can give you the information, they can give you the tools, and they can give you the direction, but it's up to you when they leave to apply what you want to apply out of it. So you're only going to get as much out of it as what you put into it. We can start going over the de-escalation stuff. We'll talk about sympathy and empathy. Does anybody know the difference between sympathy and empathy? That's exactly right. So sympathy is, again, I'm going to go to Webster because the words, they do matter. The inclination, this is sympathy, the inclination to think or feel alike, or the feeling of loyalty, tendency, or favor or support. So if you sympathize with somebody, you are agreeing with them. Empathy is exactly, it's just more wordy, but it's the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another, either past or present, without having them tell you how they feel. So all you're doing is you're understanding how they feel. So somebody feels scared. We've all felt scared. We can all empathize with feeling that way. That's the difference. So the other terms, anybody here ever heard of the OODA loop? Everybody ever heard of that term? One yes, put you on the spot. What is it?
Okay, so it is it's a process of decision making. It's someone's orientation to a situation.
That's exactly right. So OODA loop is OODA. It's just the way our brains work. It's how, and we all do it subconsciously. It's observe, orient, decide, and act. What that would look like for you guys is when you came in, you observed where everybody was at. You oriented yourself to where you wanted to sit down, decided to sit there, and then the act is you went there and sat down. That's how and it's every situation. It's where you chose to park. It's where it's a constant thing. And the reason that this is important is even the bad guys have this. Even the bad guys do this. So we'll talk about how they use that and how you can interrupt it. Anybody here familiar with the fire triangle? Yeah. So there's a violence pyramid, or a violence triangle too. 3 things it takes to have a violent act. The person has to have the capability, the opportunity, and the intent. Once those 3 things are met, that's the recipe for it. So we'll focus on the opportunity and intent. You can't take away somebody's capability. You have no way of controlling them when they're not here. It's out of your hands. But you can control their opportunity and their intent. Hick's Law, this one's probably more that you guys haven't heard of, but basically Hick's Law, it's a decision-making theory or study, and it's the more choices you have to choose from, the longer it's going to take you to make a decision. So we're going to narrow that down to 3 choices. Universally, 3 choices. These are the 3 choices I use every single day, and we'll get into those. And then a real threat versus a perceived threat. What do you think? What's a perceived threat? Anybody?
Somebody walking around with a gun.
Well, that would be a real threat, possibly, if they're a bad guy. A perceived threat is if you're told to be scared of something. So if you watch the news and you're paranoid about every little thing because the news says it's scary, or somebody told you, hey, that guy is a bad guy, or you haven't made any of your own observations. And so you're basing that off of outsider information, not stuff that you actually know. And then a real threat is something that you have physically observed as, hey, that is a bad guy. So the thing we don't want to get hung up on is letting our perceived threats dictate what we're observing. You want it to be as unbiased as possible. So our mindset, now that we're kind of getting the training, we got to shift our balance to training. One of the things that is a common denominator in violent acts, almost universally, but we're in a church and we're here for church security. Why do you think that the bad guys actually are able to pull off a violent act in a church? Or anything in a church, really, any sort of disruptive behavior? Kinda. Soft target. The soft target, that invites it. That lets it get closer, for sure. But they actually get through the doors. And nobody stops them. 90% of the time, somebody saw something. If you really break it down and you really start to ask questions, you really start to interview people, somebody saw something at some point, and they chose not to act because they're afraid to offend somebody. They're afraid how they might look if they said, oh, that person. So it's an inaction on our part that we don't, because it's a hard balance. You want it to be an inviting church. You want people to come through the doors. It's not a natural act to tell somebody not to come into a church. But there are times that's the appropriate thing to do, is to tell them not to come in. So our mindset, we need to shift and become a hunter and proactively searching for people to do wrong doings. That doesn't mean everybody. That doesn't mean just because you see one little thing. At the end, we'll do the behavior analysis. That usually takes up the most. It brings out the most questions. I'm just trying to get you guys' minds shifted into what we're trying to accomplish. Develop a bias for action. That's where we tend to just let things happen. You don't want to interject. You don't want to step in. You almost kind of don't want to actually believe what you're actually seeing. So we need to shift and just acknowledge what you saw is what you saw. It happened. You got to take action for it, especially if you're on the safety team or you're one of the people at the doors. Then for sure, like you're accepting that responsibility and you're accepting that role, that you're going to be that guy that's going to step in and possibly offend somebody. It'll be okay. I'd take a chance on offending somebody over living with myself if I let the bad guy through the door. So General Patton has a great quote, one of the ones that I love, and it applies to every single church. And it says, a good solution applied with vigor now is better than a perfect solution 10 minutes later. Everybody's looking for the 10 minutes later. There is no perfect plan. You could put 100 people around this building and then nobody show up to church because then you're that church. Or you could have one guy and then everybody gets in. So all you do is just do the best that you can with what you got. And this is where the difference between church security and everything else. How many people here do not pray for your security on Sundays? Whether it's in the parking lot or in a classroom, you just go, we'll just figure it out. All right? So everybody prays about it. I used to always say a prayer in my car before I walked through the church. And it wasn't anything big or elaborate. But you do have God on your side. And that's one of the things that a lot of church people won't talk about. But prayer without action doesn't get you anything either. So you don't need an army to protect your church. You just need good people in the right spot, and then let him figure it out. And sometimes that's enough. Because the biggest flaw with church security is you don't know how many times it's worked. You'll never know. If you go the rest of your lives having never had an incident in a church, you have no idea how many people walked away because they saw a guy with a safety vest on. So it's very easy to get complacent with it because it's like, oh, nothing's happened, but it might terrify you to realize how many things didn't happen. So just take every day that nothing happened as a win and look at it that way instead of, oh, it's not going to happen to us. So the IRA, this is coming from the bad guy side, right? Because they get a vote too. You can do all the things right, but if a bad guy wants to do bad things, they're going to try. And it says, we only have to be lucky once, you will have to be lucky always. Well, if you guys start to get proactive of looking for the bad behaviors, the different behaviors, they have to get lucky all the time because you're already looking for them, and they don't know that you're looking for them. That's why you guys have the advantage. They're expecting everybody to be passively just let everybody in. They're not expecting anybody to be watching. If they're going into a bank or any other facility that has actual security, they're expecting to be watched. They are not expecting that from a church. You guys have the biggest advantage, and it's starting to become more popular. There's security teams, safety teams. It's getting out there. But what they're not expecting is they're still hoping that you're going to let them in. They're still hoping that they're going to be able to sneak in because they don't need a lot of time. They don't plan on walking out of the building. So they don't care about that part. So you guys start looking out, then you have the advantage. So what's the ultimate goal? Because let's get into a little bit of the de-escalation stuff. Just kind of toy around with it. What's the ultimate goal for de-escalation? Has there ever been an incident at this church where somebody was just screaming, making a big old ruckus? Is there? What's that story? So I should tell you real quick too, like the way my training works, guys, I don't have any PowerPoints. This isn't a check the box. I can't stand that type of training. It's a back and forth. If I'm just going to stand up here and talk, we're going to be out of here in about 2.5 hours. But I want you to ask questions. This is your time to tell the stories. I've never been here before in my life. I don't know this neighborhood. I don't know. But I can tell you how, from what I've learned, how I would handle it and give you tools to handle a situation differently. So this isn't one of the... So there was a rowdy person. What was that all about?
Depends. There's been a couple.
Has there been a couple? Well, okay. So
Somebody getting up, dropping an F-bomb and throwing a Bible.
Okay.
What should I say the real word instead?
Getting up, cussing, and throwing a Bible.
Yeah.
And then being asked to leave. There's been cases of people just not, there being a distraction during the service. That can be maybe crying, but sometimes it's something just being restless. I'd say that's probably.
Okay. Well, let's take the cussing and throwing a Bible. Comes out as anger, right? That's what everybody sees is somebody pretty angry about something. Understand that anger is a secondary emotion. What do you think the primary emotion is that caused that person to get angry? that's not happy.
Fear?
Fear. They're scared. They don't know how to acknowledge it. They're scared. So they just go to angry. So now if I tell you to go deal with somebody that's scared versus angry, you have a completely different approach to how you approach that person, right? And really what they're angry about is not even going to be you, especially if they've never seen you before. So when we talk about de-escalation, the first thing you got to do is just disconnect yourself and realize this has nothing to do with you, especially if you don't know the person. But what's the ultimate? And I did do a little bit of reading about this church, so I know it's in the bio that it's actually you guys, whoever did the profile. I've never actually heard discipleship talked about so much in what a church wants to do. So it's actually really good. So, but what's the ultimate goal? This is for every church everywhere. What was that?
Get saved and get plugged in.
Exactly. So you can escort that person out, then what? They're back on the street, back out of the building. What if you shift your mindset? The ultimate goal is that person's salvation. Now how are you going to approach that de-escalation? Talk to them a little bit different, not get as mad, be a little more understanding. This is where the sympathy and empathy. You don't have to sympathize and agree that throwing that Bible is the right thing to do. But we've all been mad or frustrated or had that moment where you just want to throw something, kick something. We've all been there. So when it comes to talking to them, then the biggest thing is don't match their energy. And they're already up here. And if you meet them up there, they're just going to keep raising the bar. And now you're in this race you're just not going to win because you don't even understand what they're mad about. Stay calm. Just relax. Slow things down. They're going to keep their pace. A bottle of water. I don't know if you guys have waters out, but that the de-escalation thing, a bottle of water, because you can't scream and drink water at the same time. You just offer them a bottle of water. That breaks their cycle. It starts to chip away and make them realize, like, oh man, I am being a little. It doesn't fix it all right away, but it stops them from screaming for a minute. Most people will take a bottle of water too. It's just a very easy icebreaker. It's not an aggressive gesture. It's not. It's just, hey, why don't you have a bottle of water? I want to hear what you're mad about. Come talk to me. Not, you need to get out. Not any of that. Just, hey, find, I don't know in this church if there is a place that you could just, one of the things that I'm starting to encourage churches, in the last church I did down in Orleans, it's all about your resources and what you're capable of doing. But I actually encourage them to start a de-escalation ministry. Because if it could get heated, right? I mean, it does cross a line where it just gets to a point. And if it's me and Todd and we finally get this person back there, but as they're leaving, they start to calm down. If somebody got saved at this church, what's the next step? I'm not talking about they're mad and get saved. Just on a normal Sunday, somebody accepts an altar call, gives their life to God. It's the next thing that happens. Right? There's somebody that meets with them. You get at least a pamphlet, something, right? You don't just send them out the door and say good luck. There's some sort of follow-up. Well, that's what I want to encourage churches to start doing is if you get them out of the sanctuary, they are still going to be mad at the two people that got them out of there. That relationship might not be fixable. But if you have somebody else that's new to this situation that can be introduced, that's good at talking to people, good at understanding that type of stuff, and some people just have a natural knack for it. And instead of calling the cops and putting them in the back of a car, you can just sit them down in a room somewhere and just let them get it off their chest. Then you're working towards it. And that's also going to stop a potential future violent act. Because if you throw that person out on the street, they're not going to forget that. And you have no idea what they're going to come back. I see a hand up back there.
If there's not a room to do that in, can it be done outside?
Oh, absolutely. It can be done anywhere. I just, a lot of times, churches aren't thinking about the full long term of what you're trying to, they want the immediate, get them out of here. And I understand that, but if we are going to keep doing this as a church, then you really need to play. If you approach it like you're trying to save them, right? If you were out on the street discipling to people and spreading the word of God, you wouldn't just dismiss somebody and walk on, right? So why would you do it actually in a church? I understand you got to end the disruption, but sometimes calling the cops is the first reaction, and it shouldn't be. It will cross a line, and that's up to the church. That's up to your leadership. That's for your guys to talk about, and I encourage you guys to have trainings on your own. Like, you don't always need to have a guest speaker or a guest come in. If you guys have a situation, and maybe on a Tuesday or whenever you guys kind of have a meet off on Sundays, talk about it. But you got to be willing to be honest about what you did wrong, what you can do better. How can you be better at doing it? That's the time for that. So just taking it from get them out of here, that's not going to work, because they're going to come back. We had a situation at my church where there was two 14-year-olds got in a fight. And he was actually trying to fight the security guards to get off that other kid. And he stormed out of the building. And I promise you, I have never prayed so hard in my entire life to not have a kid come back to a church, because I knew why he was coming back. And it probably wasn't to talk. So that's the risk you take when you're just throwing somebody out the door. It's a very, very real possibility. And if your security team knows who they are, then if they do come back, then absolutely 100%, they're probably a threat. And I'll talk about what bodily, like how to read, how they're walking and all that type of stuff. But just know if they get thrown out the doors the next time they're coming through, it's probably not to say hello. It might be, but I wouldn't bet my money on it. Go ahead.
So we have, so just kind of where we are in the city, we have, well, probably a lot of people, but one thing that we have a lot of is people that are just mentally ill. And those people can, whether it's schizophrenia or, just have lost their minds to drugs or whatever, they can sometimes be unreasonable, and sometimes deciding whether or not they're going to be reasonable has to happen at the door. But from what I'm learning, figuring out who is an actual threat and who is just a little bit off is kind of been a challenge. So
that is all in how they're acting, and the behavior analysis side of that will break down where that line gets crossed. But when it does come to mental illness, that's one of the hardest things when you're talking about de-escalation to deal with, is you're thinking they're a rational person, and they're not. But the thing that I have found that with mental illness is, and it's hard it took me years of doing it wrong to figure it out that I was doing it wrong, is sometimes somebody with mental illness, it's you. They're just not responding well to you. Like, I could be talking to this person as nice as can be and doing everything for them, and they could care less. But Todd could come up, and they're best buds out of nowhere. Harness that relationship and just step out of it and let Todd handle it. If somebody with mental illness and they're a regular and they just, for whatever reason, they decided to be friends with something, then just harness that and say, hey, we got to get so-and-so in here, and they just need to come talk to them. Because for what that's the very hard unknown, and sometimes it's the same person. Like, they just, for whatever the reason is. And that's where you got to keep your own ego in check and just go, I'm not the person to fix this problem. But that person is, so here you go. And sometimes you got to completely leave, like be completely out of their sight. Because you just, there's a passenger on a train. I saw him every week. He hated me. Did nothing but be nice to the guy. And he had schizophrenia. And the person I worked with, they were best buds. I'm like, he's meaner than I am. But they got along great, so I just stayed out of the way. I'm not even going to go deal with it. And some people just have, I don't know if it's the energy they put on, I don't know what it is. We had a guy, he spent his whole time going and talking to prisoners at jails, and he would minister in prisons. I have never stepped foot in a prison. And as our congregation started to shift, because those were where we were reaching out to, he could speak to them on a level that there was no way. But when it came to our gun qualifications, that dude would hit dirt at 10 yards. He couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a bullet, but he could talk anybody off a ledge. I was like, well, give up your gun and you're gonna do this. So just harness your strengths. You can work on some weaknesses, but some people, it's a natural, and I am not natural at that at all. It took me a long time to sympathize and empathize. I was more of the just get them out of here, end this now, we'll fix it later. And when it comes to the way you talk to somebody, like I said, do not match their energy, stay calm. That late night DJ voice, just monotone, just relax. They're gonna come down to your level. They're gonna realize it's not working. They're gonna match what you're saying. Mirror what they're saying. If they're saying, I'm mad about this, just repeat it back to them and say, oh, I understand that this is what you got going on. Shows you're listening. That's what they want to do. They want to be heard. They don't want to be told what to do. That's right what they're mad about. So when you mirror what they're saying to you, and I keep one of those tiny little notepads, because I have a terrible memory sometimes when it comes to this, and I'll just jot just a quick note of what they said and repeat it back to them. And if they're coming across as angry, then label that emotion for them and say, man, it seems like you're really mad about this. And if they say, oh, I'm not mad, I'm like, oh, I understand. It sounds like you're mad. What are you? Are you know, get them to acknowledge how they're feeling. And it'll just turn into a back and forth. And if you have that long game of salvation in the back of your head, you're going to have more patience to deal with them screaming and not match their level and not get drawn into it. And if it is somebody that you know, then I wouldn't just stay out of it altogether. I don't know what this church, if there are people that know folks that are going to come in here and cause a disruption. But I literally got this email. I'm going to check. I don't like to do this, but on February 7th. This happened at a Catholic church in North Dakota. A woman came into church topless and started taking statues off the altar and destroying them. That was February 7th in North Dakota. How would you guys handle that?
Get her a coat.
Get her a coat. But I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? You want to, I mean, somebody just comes down here, no shirt on, and just starts tearing stuff up. What are you going to do? That would be the first failure of that for sure. Like, but there's always that I would hope maybe they should catch it out at the door. But let's say she just was sitting in the back and she was just buying her time and waited, and she acted normal until she was ready to create her scene.
We usually have one person at the front of the church standing there. Hopefully they would.
Who would actually do something about it? What'd you do?
So I actually dealt with something like this downtown.
Okay.
I work for the federal government, doing security. And is this woman that actually likes to do things like that. She waits for people to come out until she has a crowd and then takes her shirt off. And when she's on federal property, that's when we can do something about it. And they always send me out because I'm the only female.
Yeah.
So I'll be the one to go out there. And I'm just like, ma'am, can we not do this today? And she's like, well, she's always on drugs, whatever. And it's like, she has some excuse. And it's like, let's put your shirt on and talk. Let's put your bra back on and talk.
Yeah.
And then usually she'll do that. And then we'll be like, okay, you have to remember you can't do this around people because if somebody calls the cops, you're going to jail for indecent exposure and whatever, da-da-da-da-da. She'll be like, you're right, and then she'll do it again next month. But she'll stop right then and she'll take care of herself and then she'll leave us at least. So.
Yeah. My point was there's so many of you were hoping somebody else would do something. That's the point we're trying to get across, is somebody actually stepping in and doing something. That's that shock factor. That's that nobody saw that coming today. And you're not going to see it coming, whatever it might be. I mean, that's the small end of it. And everybody goes to the active shooter side of it, which is really the smallest percentage of crime committed in a church is an active shooter. It's the one that gets the most attention, but you're far more likely to have robberies, vandalism, trespassing type stuff, disturbances like that are far more likely than an active shooter. But everybody, that active shooter seems to be the bar. So, yes, sir.
Yes, I think in a situation like that, if I'm sitting beside a person, they start taking their clothes off, I think it's my responsibility right then and there to handle the situation before, if a lady or if a man is doing that, I would say, hey, this is not the place, let's go outside,
Yeah.
Before
Yeah,
that person-
that'd be the ideal situation is hopefully they don't even make it out of the pew.
That puts the responsibility on the whole congregation as a whole,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, this is, I mean, the people that are on the actual security team that actually carry guns, in my opinion, are saying, whether you actually take an oath or not, you're saying it's on you, that nothing bad's gonna happen. But it's everybody's responsibility. If you, I hate the cliche, if you see something, say something. But if you do, and when I get into the human behavior stuff, like I said, that's what takes up the lump of time. The understanding that words matter and how we train and use our words. And the de-escalation is really just the two small pieces of this. But when it comes to this, every one of you understands. Like, how many people, you guys all attend this church? Are there any guests in this, like, that don't normally come to this church here? Okay, how many of you are close to sitting where you sit at on Sunday morning? Look at that. It's not even Sunday. Everybody has their normal spots. I bet in the parking lot, almost everybody has an unofficial assigned spot. Within a spot or two, I'd be willing to bet on Sundays you park pretty dang close to where you normally do. So every single person in this church knows when something's off. And whether you know it or not, you'll subconsciously react to it, whether you want to admit it or not, because that's how we're programmed to work. It's getting that comfortable level of going and telling a security team, a leader of the church, hey, somebody needs I didn't get a good feeling about this. And it's that inaction that has always allowed all of this stuff to happen. Is every time that book, that's what everybody is saying, that is literally a book of victims of violent crimes that were interviewed, that when they did their interview and they did their work up to the crime, and they were indicated on every single warning sign that they ignored. I'm not blaming the victim of it, but there was every single time there was warning signs that it was gonna happen, and they were ignored. You gotta stop ignoring it. That's what allows it to happen. So, another one that I wanna read, and this isn't church, but it drives it home. So this is about a school, and if you've heard the story, try to keep it, because I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to read some of the highlights. And this is a known kid that had been having behavioral problems in a school. So this says, the document says, several hours before the shooting, at least 3 teachers and staff members warned school administrators they believed the boy had brought a gun to school. The boy's backpack was searched, but no gun was found. The administrators did not remove the boy from class, lock down the school, or call the police. That kid shot that teacher. How old do you think that kid was? Yep, 6-year-old. But how many warning signs were ignored, and you're going to let a 6-year-old do it? And that's literally just the tip of that iceberg of that. There is a list of behavioral problems. So I don't know if any of you guys work with the youth, with the kids downstairs. This applies down there too, that you can tell when they're off. If somebody, even if you've got a kid that's normally mad, they get madder. If they're normally mad, that's their normal. So, if you guys want, we can take a 10-minute break, come back, and we'll get into what to look for and what it all means.
All right. So, hey, you guys, moving forward, I want to encourage you all to just continue asking questions. As he's been saying, man, interaction is just, just been fantastic. But we are running the mic, so this is being recorded, and so there's two of us that are running the mic. So if you have a question or something, just wave us down. We'll come over. We'll hold the mic in front of you. And yeah, so we just would encourage more interaction, more questions, and that kind of stuff. So you ready to roll?
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Okay, so that was kind of the easy stuff. This will be what you guys are really, based on what I've been approached about, what you guys are really, really wanting to know about. And that's who's the bad guy. What do they look like? What do they act like? What are they doing that's different than everybody else? We're going to start with, remember I said the Hicks Law, the more choices you have, the longer it's going to take you to get through those choices. So, we got 3 choices to make, and this could be for everybody. If you're a concealed carrier, it absolutely applies to your everyday life. I encourage my wife to do this. She's finally coming around to it. So the first option, if this is just as the first time you see somebody, or a group of people, or you walk into a room. Like I will just use the example, you walk into a grocery store. The very first thing that I do, just a quick scan, and is, do you need to engage them? And that means, do you need to kill them? Remember we just talked about a lady coming up topless to wreck stuff. Nobody expected that. It's because your brain wasn't already there. We start at the worst case scenario because is it going to be easier for you to talk yourself into or out of killing somebody? It'll be easier to talk yourself out of it, I hope, right? So you start there. It's just just ask yourself, is there anybody that I need to kill here? No. 99.999% of the time, that answer is going to be no, but you started there. So if you did walk into the room and there was an active shooter situation going on, and you walked into that room or that area prepared to see that, you're already there. And those seconds that it's going to take you to get there is the difference between winning and losing. Like you hear the stories about those active shooters, those guys that, one shot from the back of them, their brain, they were already there. So that's why we start there. The second option, or the second decision to make, is you isolate them. And that means place yourself in a position that if something were to happen, you're already there. Because what we're doing is, and I talked, I said about 300, 350 a service. Does that sound about right for, okay. We're going to narrow, so you got 350 people in this building. How many of them you think are bad guys? 0, maybe 1, 2 little, right? But you're narrowing it down, right? You got 350, and if you take that number and say, and you don't know anything about any of them, that seems like an overwhelming, it's 350 against 1. If I'm the one, for this, there's 50 of you and 1 of me? You guys all know each other, I don't, so how do I know who's good and who's not good? I can feel like an overwhelming task if you think everybody's against you, which it's just not true. So we're going to take that 350 and teach you how to narrow it down to 1 or 2. Those odds are a lot better. And it saves you a lot of time and energy on who's going to do it. The one question that I encourage everybody to ignore is why. It doesn't matter. Why you think they're going to do something, why they are. Like if you're going to be the one that caused the disruption. I don't care why you're going to cause the disruption. That doesn't matter. And so I think you're going to be the one to do it. If it happens today, you're going to be the one that does it. So ignore it, because we get hung up on in today's society or this generation or that, or you start making excuses for it. Those excuses don't matter because the act is still going to happen. So let's ignore that and just focus on what's actually going to happen. And the third decision we have to make is to just contact them. And that's simple as just introduce yourself, to continue to observe, but be sincere about it, because they can pick up if you're lying about it. Because let's say it is a bad guy. They live by a different set of rules than what we live by, and they're used to, they do the same thing we're doing. They're just better at it, because they survive on it. So you need to be sincere. You're not a cop, you're not interrogating them, you're not, just be as sincere as possible. And then this is the first moment. Remember that violence triangle we're talking about, the intent and opportunity that we're going to inject in? This is your first opportunity to affect that intent. If you take away their intent, there is no violent act. This is your first opportunity to do so. Let's say it is a bad guy. They were here to do something bad, and you come up to them and you're acting like a jerk. Is that going to stop them from doing what they came here to do? No, they're going to justify it in their head that this is this. You just added to their cause, or whatever it is that they've got in their head of why they want to do what they're going to do. So this is the very first opportunity you have to stop something bad from happening, is the first time you interact with them. So to isolate, this is where I encourage security members to be here. And the way we do it in my church is all of our security guards start on the outside of the building, because the way this works, the more you can watch as they approach, the more the advantage that you have. Obviously, in a very urban setting like this, the distances are a lot shorter, so that adds some challenges to it, but it's still able to do it. But the way we would do it is our security members would stand next to greeters. We would only have 1 or 2 open carry guys, if that. Everybody was concealed carry. Everybody looked like greeters, acted like greeters. And the last 2 people that were outside before services started were the 2 security guys that if there was somebody that we recognized as they might be the ones to do something. Because 99% of your people are normal. They're just, that's how they are every Sunday. Ignore them. They're here for Sunday. They're not a problem. We would come and sit behind them. Now, remember I said everybody kind of has their unofficial assigned seats and whatnot, and everybody kind of just knows where everybody is at. The way we would kind of counteract that, because somebody would ask, like, hey, why are you sitting there? And I got asked that a couple of times, like, that's weird, you don't normally sit here. Why are you, But you're sitting right behind the guy that you think is the bad guy, so you're not going to sit there and go, well, because this guy's weird. I mean, you could, I guess, but you're not really helping nothing out. So what I would say is, I'm just playing a little trick on Pastor. Just want to move my seat and see how he reacts to it. That tells the person that's at church, because they get it, right? That's a running joke. And I don't care what type of church it is. Every church does that. So that wouldn't raise any alarm to you if I said, I'm just playing a little joke on Pastor. Nobody is none the wiser to that. And the guy in front of you or the person in front of you, no, yeah, just playing a joke. Doesn't matter. They have no clue who you are. So that's how we would isolate somebody, that there's somebody right there, right behind them. So if they were to get up and they were to go do something, it's an immediate end. Yes, sir.
Are you uniformed?
We'll have a handful of collared shirts with just the church logo on it, so it looks professional. It doesn't say security, doesn't say anything like that on it, but it would be just tan or khaki slacks and a tucked in polo and your concealed carry stuff. So, and then everybody else would just be plain clothes, concealed carry. If you didn't know them personally and knew they were on the team, you'd have no idea they were there. We do have assigned zones when we are in the sanctuary. Was talking, and they said if you're a concealed carrier, you can carry in the church. How many people actually concealed carry in this church, like on a Sunday? Okay, something you guys to think about, right? If you're not a team, I don't know if you guys are actually on the team, but if you don't train as a team, and everybody's going to kind of be reacting to what's going on, who's going to engage? Like the guy comes through here, and you're sitting over here. Are you going to engage? You should. You're right there. You shouldn't. Because how many people are sitting between you and there? And what are they going to do? How are they going to react? Are they going to jump up? What do you guys tell your families? Like, if you don't conceal carry, what's your plan? If somebody actually came in with a gun, what's your plan? What are you going to do?
Throw everything you have around it and then charge it.
Charge them. That's an option. Run? Where? This is just something to think about, right? Which door are you going to use? I mean, there's no wrong answers, right? Because I conceal carry, and the way I handle a situation when my wife and kids are with me is completely different than if I would do it if I were alone. So there is no wrong answer. You just need to know your answer. Because this, like I said, this is not to be paranoid, this isn't to be scared, that's not it at all. But your chance of survival just multiplies exponentially if you think it takes 30 seconds to look and go, okay, I'm gonna go out that door. That's my obstacle. I gotta try to get out of that pew. If you're in the middle, man, just lay down. Your instinct's to run, but like if you're older or not, you got an injury, you can't move as fast, you're not going anywhere. Lay down, get low. Because 99% of these are going to be over within the first 2 minutes, one way or another. So where are you going to make it to in 2 minutes? Not far. So that's why this making this and having this mindset, and I do not want you guys to be paranoid. It's not every time the door opens, the boogeyman's coming through. It's just if your mind already has a plan in place, statistically you are more likely to make it because you're gonna automatically start to engage that plan. It's gonna be automatic. And we'll talk about it. So the way the brain works, the limbic system, that's a big, that's not the big scientific word, but that's the part of your brain, that's the fight, flight, or freeze. When you get that shot of adrenaline, that's the part of your brain that is gonna take over. No questions asked, don't care how good you are. Adrenaline hits, that's the part of your brain that takes over. And that whole mentality of you're gonna rise to the occasion is 1,000% false. You will fall to the lowest level of training that you have mastered. That's it. So, how many people take their guns out of their holster at night and put it somewhere? I mean, there's nothing wrong, you do, okay? Let me ask you something, when you do it, how do you do it? Like, do you just casually, just putting it away for the night? You're doing it safely. This is being recorded, so all gun safety rules apply. But, yeah. But, but you take your gun out of the holster and you put it somewhere safe at night? Okay. And this isn't to pick on you. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to tell anybody doing is wrong. Everybody's situation is, I've got young kids at the house, so how I handle it is different than how other people are going to handle it, and that's fine. I'm just trying to make a point. How many times do you shoot your gun a year, like for practice? Well, that's always the answer, but I could shoot 100 rounds a day, and I could still try to say it's not enough, but just roughly. Less than 100 rounds per year for practice? Okay. So let's just say 200 nights a year you put your gun away. That's 200 opportunities you have to practice drawing your gun correctly and not just gonna put it away. Stand in a mirror, act like you're gonna draw it, like you're actually gonna point it at somebody. Don't pull the trigger, but use the mirror, use yourself. That's 200 free opportunities to practice because guess what? When that adrenaline hits, and the last time you pulled your gun, that's how you're gonna do it when the adrenaline hits. So if it's just all lackadaisical, not really putting a lot of thought into how you're doing it, how you're trying to do it, That's what's going to happen. There were studies when the LAPD used to carry revolvers, they would find officers that were involved in shootings, dead officers, with empty shell casings in their pockets because they were so used to going to the gun range and emptying their revolver shells into their hands and putting them in their pockets because they didn't want to pick them up off the ground when they were done shooting. So when they got in a gunfight, they were still taking the time to catch them in their hand and put them in their pocket. Makes you think about when you go to a gun range or you're shooting with your buddies, what bad habits. Go have fun, go enjoy it. But just think about it. If your life depended on it, is that how you would do it? How many people don't let their magazines hit the ground? You go to a gun range and you just kind of pull it out of the gun. In a gunfight, that's what you're going to do. You're going to take the time to take it out of the gun instead of it's just a piece of plastic. I promise it won't break it if you just let it hit the ground. You can go home. I had my wife do this. Literally had her at home with an empty magazine, empty gun, and she literally just sat there and just pushed the magazine release and just got used to letting it hit the ground. You don't have to go to a gun range to do it. Just sit on your couch and just stop catching it. And just let it bounce off the floor. Put it back in, let it bounce off the floor. To where you instinctively just don't even reach for it. Because those bad habits, and you're not doing it on purpose. I've just taken gun classes that I went to prepared and I thought I was ready for and realized very quickly that I had developed some really bad habits. Are there any ex-military law enforcement guys in here? Your qualification shoots, if you had a gun jam, do they stop the whole firing line because your gun quit working? Oh, they actually let you do that now? See, when I was in the Navy, it was if one gun broke, everybody stopped shooting. So when I went to a gun class, I'm talking about like a legit gun malfunction.
So with the training I have now, I've been doing armed security for 12 years. I can't remember, but for 12 years it's happened.
Yeah,
And then raise your hand if it still don't work. That's what you do because you raise your outline.
yeah.
But you always go.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get at, that raising your hand. That's what I did. I paid a lot of money to go and raise my hand at a gun class because my gun didn't work, because they had me put dummy rounds in the magazine knowing it wasn't going to work. And as soon as I put my hand up, the guy came up and asked what branch of the military I was in. Because guess what? In a gunfight, when your gun stops working, the bad guy's still going to be shooting. And so you don't even think that that's a habit that you're going to,
I always forget to raise my hand, so I never rate the outline.
that's.
Because it doesn't happen enough for me. So it's like,
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like those are the constant habits that you do that you have no idea that you've ingrained in your head that what you're going to fall back to. So don't rely on rising to any occasion. And don't think like if something were to happen in this church that you're going to automatically know what to do about it. We just proved with the topless lady, everybody wanted to, so somebody else was going to do something. And that's a common thing. Just know that if you're on the security or the safety team, just know that they're pointing at you. You're the person they're expecting to do something. If you're a concealed carry person and you're out in town and you're with your friends or family, you're the one that you're saying, I'm going to do something about it. I'm not telling you to go and be the hero and all that, but there's a level of responsibility. And if you're carrying in the church and you're going and you think in your head, if somebody comes in, I'm going to step in and do something, then these are the things you need to be thinking about. You need to wonder so if it's one bad guy in you, and there's 350, that's 348 are left, what are they going to do? Because you got to react to that too. It's not just a simple, this isn't a shooting range. It's not everybody's going to stay right where they're at. So think about it. Have a plan for it. Yeah, and again, that goes back. You're not going to have the perfect plan. That doesn't exist. It's just have the first 2 or 3 steps. And then as the situation evolves, you're going to have to change what you're doing. But know who's going to, and maybe the concealed people, you guys get together. It doesn't have to be official training. Like I said, you guys are a church. You're not looking to be certified in anything. Just have, hey, if it's this side, stay out of it. If it's that side, I'll stay out of it. And then because you don't have that crossfire. Because you don't know that you're not going to do it. You might not even think about it because you've never really thought about it before. You might just see a gun, see a bad guy reacting. The minute you pull that trigger, regret it for the rest of your life. So have a plan and just go, hey, if it's on this side, it's not even safe for me to do it, and that's okay. So.
On behalf of Sam, he asked me to ask, what do we do in an active shooter situation?
Can you repeat that question?
On behalf of Sam, he asked me to ask you, what do we do in an active situation, a shooter situation, which you explained a little bit there. That guy, if he's on that side, takes care of it, but what should we do, or do's and don'ts?
Okay, so do's and don'ts. First big, do not ever exceed your training. Don't, it feels good. I forget, there's the FBI guy, that 40-yard shot in the mall, or maybe that was the FBI guy who was in the church. There's the mall, one single shot to the head, dropped a guy 25, 30. I wouldn't take that shot on my best day. I don't have the training. I don't have the skills to do it. It sounds great on paper. It looks super cool, but I'd be willing that's a handful of guys that can make that shot with a pistol in that situation. Know your skills, know your limits, know your training. Do not ever exceed that. You're going to get in way over your head. Some of the do's is, like I said, have this idea of, okay, if it's going to be here, it's going to be there. And once you have it in your head, it's there. You don't have to think about it every day, every moment, every anything. If it is an unorganized team, which it sounds like right now it is, you guys will probably get there. It sounds like you're proactively working to get there, is to talk about it. This is like a cliche thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Just talk about what you would do. Talk about your comfort levels. Like if I'm going to be sitting next to you and we both are carrying, and I don't know anything about you, then how are we going to work together as a team? I mean, then it's going to be a bunch of individuals trying to get one thing done, and it's just going to be a mess. So talk to your people that you know. Train with each other. Go out and shoot. Go out and have lunch. Go out, get to know it. It doesn't have to be some sort of official team. That makes it a little bit better. The do not shoot across. Like I said, so you are responsible for that bullet until it stops. End of story. So if you're going to put your finger on that trigger, do not shoot across something that you're not willing to accept the consequences, good or bad, for how that goes. So I can't tell. When to pull the trigger is probably one of the most intimate decisions you'll make in your life. Nobody can tell you when to do that. We can read the laws. We can go over the laws and tell you when the law says it's okay. But that's your decision to make. I'm not ever going to tell somebody when. And I'm okay if they freeze up and they don't. That's something, it's all something we got to live with. So as far as the do's, do engage as quickly as possible. 100%. That's where that mindset, that's why you start at that level of kill. When you walk in, when you see somebody, and like I said, it sounds so bad when I say it, but if you see somebody walk through, just go quick, do I need to kill them? No, that's hopefully 100% of the rest of your life, that's the answer. But if you start there, like let's say somebody did and you weren't there when they walked in, you're gonna have that shock factor. Nobody is ready for a topless lady to come running down and start breaking stuff. There's that hesitation of your brain seeing it and you actually recognizing like, hey, this is actually happening. That moment of time is when people die. That's the gap that they needed to start doing what they were doing. When we start going over this human behavioral now, we'll talk about one of the books on it. It's called Left of Bang. Bang is the incident. whatever it might be, whether it's a disruptive person, bad guy, whatever it might be. Right now, even right now, we are left of that. Hasn't happened. Bang hasn't happened. We're ahead of it. We try to close that gap as much as possible. Because once bang happens, everything after that, you're reacting to it. What's faster, action or reaction? Action, 100% of the time. So the faster you can flip that, and that's where that OODA loop comes into play. Do you know that most active shooters in anywhere, it's not their first time in that building? It's the other advantage you guys have. The likelihood of just some random person randomly coming off the street and picking this church is almost nil. The chance of a domestic issue bleeding over into this church is much higher. Custody issue with a kid. These types of issues are much more likely to affect a church than just some random person. That's where also you have the advantage. You start using these tools of what to look for and what human behavior actually means. You'll catch that difference ahead of the situation. And if you shift your mindset into a proactive, I'm going to do something about it instead of ignore it, then you're staying ahead of it and preventing it. That makes sense? So that action, 100% of the time. And what your comfort level, my comfort level, his comfort level might be is all going to be different. So if I carry a gun in a church, I just position myself to where there's least amount of individuals between me and an entrance or an exit. Because the crossfire or the shooting over somebody's head is minimized. You're minimizing that risk. And if you see somebody already engaging, then don't try to shoot past them. All right, so basic gun safety stuff. So since we're talking about the active shooter stuff, anybody here have any medical training? What kind of medical training you got? He wants you to talk on the mic. He's jonesing for you. What do you got? What kind of medical training? I mean, isn't that the... Okay. EMT level stuff. Perfect. Right there. You guys need medical training? It doesn't have to be official. You guys have a Good Samaritan law here in Missouri? Or, yeah. There you go. Anybody know how to stop bleeding? Look at it. Hold your hands up high if you know how to stop bleeding. Now, everybody that doesn't have their hand up, that's who you go ask for a little bit of medical training on CPR. So the Las Vegas shooting. Anybody remember how many people were hurt at the Las Vegas, that big one? That was shot and killed. Total injured. I'm cheating because I had to look it up today before I came, but it's a big number. It's over 850. Oh, well, now, okay, that's injured. That's including 60 were shot and killed, actually killed by bullets. 400-ish were killed, and this, the way it was reported, was by either a bullet or shrapnel from a bullet or something. They didn't really specify. That leaves us 350-ish left. How do you think they got hurt? Yep, stampede, trampled, trying to escape, get hung up on a fence, twist an ankle, blow a knee out. Think about that. 800-something people, over half of them weren't even shot and they were injured. So think about this room, 350 people trying to get out the doors at the same time. Even if you actively engage, he might only get one shot off and you're going to have 15 people get hurt, if not more, just because they're trying to get away. Not even related to what happened. Medical training. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so would it, so just like this room alone, because this is just a large box,
Yeah.
would it behoove us to even just have a plan for, man, God forbid, but if that happens in this room, what does that look like? Does half the church run this way? Does half the church lay down?
Well, so that's the thing. You're not going to be able. Now you're trying to organize the general public, and I equate that to trying to herd a bunch of cats. It's not going to happen. You could have it color coded out here, and I promise you, somebody's going to go the wrong way, and that's going to throw the whole system off. And that's why I tell every individual, have your own plan, have your own idea. Your own physical capabilities are going to dictate what you can and can't do. Maybe it limits your options, maybe it gives you options. But have your own plan, know what you're going to do. As far as the church goes, when you have guys that have medical training of that level, like, you got an ex-firefighter or a firefighter in there, man, a triage center, that's what you're going to need. You're going to need somewhere to put people waiting for help to come instead of getting walked on or stepped over. Now you're adding more injuries to injuries. And this is something that, and this is where every church is different because the building layouts, the people are different, everything's different. But that sort of informal training, it doesn't have to be you could call the fire department in and have them teach you how to set something up. Just something that's good enough. That's all because right now, if you got nothing, anything's going to be better than that. And then once you get that down real good, then maybe you can know, hey, this is actually a good idea. CPR training is a fantastic option, generally free, very easy to get your hands on doing it. If not, then maybe people are CPR certified in here. Do you think you could teach somebody how to do CPR on the fly pretty quick? It's not that complicated. AEDs, do you have AEDs in the church? Where are they at? Perfect, man. Y'all know where they're at. That's great. Stuff like that. Do you have a first aid kit? Do you have a trauma kit? Like a stop the bleed kit? Like if somebody were bleeding from a bullet wound. They're not expensive. Talk to some of your gun guys. They can get, it's not hard. Think about that. If you were able to act, just like you're as actively and as quickly as you can engage an active shooter, the faster you stop bleeding, the more probability they are to live. If you have the tools to just, like I said, just good enough, they're not going to be comfortable, they're not going to like it, but they'll probably appreciate that over being dead. So just learning just basic, how to apply a tourniquet. How many guys with guns carry tourniquets? That number got small. You guys should carry tourniquets. There's two other things you should carry with you with a gun. What are they? Cell phone? Yeah? Flashlight. Why a flashlight? Yeah? If you don't have a flashlight, you only have a 12-hour gun. Once the sun goes down, you can't see what you're shooting at. So we got a flashlight, tourniquet. What else? Extra mag. How come? Reload. Gun failure. Your gun's much more likely to fail than it is for you to run out of bullets. Cell phones are great. Do not be the guy that records the incident. If your camera's working, 911 works too. Yes, sir.
I heard, not my practical experience,
Yeah.
but I heard from people who were in active shooting situation.
Yep.
That sometimes if you engage the bad guy, he escapes, the first thing he's going to try to do is call the police and turn things on you.
Yep.
So the faster you reach out to law enforcement and tell them exactly what's happening without telling too much, the better for you.
Yes. And that's another thing to think about. And it's going to be a little easier in the church because you know your people. They're out in public. If you see a guy shooting at a guy, you see two guys shooting, who's the bad guy? Now imagine being a cop and showing up to that, because that's what they're going to do here. Yes, sir.
Do you recommend posting it anywhere, like saying no guns in here unless approved or anything like that? Or anything?
No.
I know it's not going to stop the bad guy, but if we know who is concealed carrying, if we see that guy approaching that guy, who are you going to know?
Yeah, that goes back to the criminals are going to be criminals, right? A sticker's not going to stop them.
Well, just like someone who isn't the criminal.
Oh, I see.
And
Oh, you
they're
mean
shooting.
just to,
Yeah, that
like,
you don't
if
know.
I were to come and visit, don't bring my gun through the door?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that, I mean, if you think it's becoming a problem, I would for sure. Just that way, you know, it's only, like you said, only certain people. I don't see why that would be an issue. I know in Arkansas, you had to have a sticker on the door because when they changed their laws, it was up to the specific church of whether concealed carry was allowed in the church or not. The state actually stepped back and said, we're not dealing with it anymore. And so that was the requirement. So yeah, if you guys do not want anybody carrying guns in here, I don't see just a small, you know, no concealed carry. I would just put it just no concealed carry allowed. And if people ask, then go, hey, we have a security team, and just be forthright with it and go, yeah, we have a security team and they're trained and they're, you know, they're approved to do it. So, because that way, if that were me approaching the church and, you know, no concealed carry, I'd be like, okay, well, I would just ask somebody, well, is there a security team here? And we'll talk into when that crosses the line and when it's weird how many questions you're asking about it, but just a quick, is there? That's not weird. You guys just start to, for me, when I'm out in public, you know, I like to play the game and find how many people I can see carrying a gun. New guys are the easiest to spot. They keep tugging on it and pulling on it and thinking there's a spotlight on it. So, yeah, when it comes to the active shooter and that type of stuff, the medical side is something that people tend to want to ignore. And I don't want to say ignore, but they just don't really think about that you're far more likely to be injured trying to get away than you are by the guy actually being able to hit you with a bullet. That's why I say if you think you're mobility impaired or you're just not sure to be quick, get down. And once it's over, like that gentleman had brought up, once it's over, you need to put the gun away because understand that those cops are coming and they're going to see a guy with a gun and they are not going to care. And if you can't get it in the holster fast enough and you hear the sirens coming, I'd put it on the ground. I would not keep it in your hand. They're humans too. They're fallible. Not giving them a whole pass, but I mean, you're a first responder. How high does that adrenaline get on a good call? Like, yeah, you're not paying attention to nothing. Yeah, yeah. It's just, it's your human body. It's not that you can train all you want. Once that adrenaline spikes, it's over. You're going to your training, whatever level that may or not be. And if it's nothing, then that's where that freeze comes in, and you're just gonna freak out. But like if I was sitting here and I just told myself every day, like, okay, you know, if there's an active shooter, I'm gonna go that way. That's the door I'm gonna go towards, good, bad, indifferent. I'm going that way. Then when it happened, and that adrenaline spikes, you're gonna fall to that plan, and you're gonna automatically do it. And that's why your chances of surviving it go up. You're not thinking about it. You're not going to have time to develop a plan. So now when we come to the observing them, and this is where you guys have the advantage. The first thing you have to do is establish a baseline. I was talking to somebody about what normal behavior is. Normal to that person is what they do every day. It's not normal to you. So if they throw a fit and kick and scream and curse at their car every time they park it, but they do that every day, that's their normal behavior. So that's what we're doing, is we're going to establish a baseline of what is normal. How do people normally approach the church? What street do they come in on? And this is a little bit difficult, but you'll find that the same people probably use the same door. How many here use the same door every time they come through? Yeah. So there's a natural door too. People are inherently lazy and will just take the path of least resistance to a door. That's normal people. People trying to hide something are going to try to fit in, and as they try to fit in, they're going to look weird. Their movement is going to be weird. It's not going to, like, if you and I are walking to the church and you're not trying to hide something and I'm trying to hide something, I'm not going to walk the same as you. I'm going to look different. And that's going to matter. And that's knowing your people. Like, and this is the number 2 is define the anomaly. Now, here's the thing with anomalies is not every anomaly means it's a threat. If somebody was walking a little bit different, like they got a little bit more of a limp, and that's where we go back to the decision making. Man, if you know the person intimately and they're just acting weird or they just seem off, again, just go talk to them. Oh, they just had knee surgery. They're not carrying a shotgun in their pants. They just had knee surgery and they can't bend their knee. That's what most of it is, but you acknowledge, hey, I noticed something different. I'm going to proactively take steps to figure out what it is. That's where we start ignoring stuff. You ignore something and go, oh, it's just this. You don't know that until you actively go up, talk to the person, figure out what they got going on. Like I said, be sincere about it, but just go, hey, man, noticed your limp, man, everything okay? And then they'll tell you the story. Or if they are hiding something, they'll get weird real fast, and then you'll know. You won't know what it is, and that's fine too. But you'll know, hey, that was way different. That was way out of the norm. That guy that came into a Texas church wearing a trench coat, carrying a shotgun under, you can't tell me that in Texas in the summertime, nothing until he got in the door. Somebody saw something at some point and they chose not to do anything about it. So the 6 things that we're looking at, there's 6 different domains, and it's going to be body language, biometric cues. This is redness of the face, sweaty. If you contact them and you go to shake their hand and they got really sweaty hands for no reason, like right now it's 20 degrees outside. If somebody had really sweaty hands, that'd be weird. It'd be something to cue up on. The proxemetics. This is how they interact with a crowd. You guys heard that gut feeling? Oh, I had a gut feeling. I had an instinct. That's not random. There's science behind your unconscious body actually knows something is going on. It's not something to be ignored. It's not something, oh, I'm just being paranoid. That's how we survived in the wilderness before all of this. You knew something was off. And don't ignore it. And a lot of times people will sit there with something like that. They'll go, like, somebody just walk by and just go, man, I got that real uneasy feeling about it. And the reason we ignore it is because of the politically correct culture we live in, is you're afraid to, like, look, if you weren't racist that morning when you woke up, just because somebody of a different race walked by, it's not automatic that you're racist all of a sudden. There's a reason that made you feel weird. We're taught to ignore it. And to be blunt about it, it's killing us for no reason. So you know yourself, you know, like, oh, that was the geographics. That's where you guys start paying attention to graffiti. That's kind of what that's talking about. That if you just, you're living around the city, you guys know your blocks, you know your neighborhood. You start to notice just this one, like for us, we started getting tagged with this one specific type of graffiti. That's the geographics. Something in the neighborhood's changing. Pay attention to it. You're not cops, you're not going to be actively out there hunting criminals, but you're paying attention that there's a shift in the neighborhood. That shift is going to work its way here. The atmospherics, that's literally the atmosphere of like whatever a typical Sunday feels like, whether you're worshiping God and that everything's way up high, and if everybody's just having a great time, and then one person walks in the room and like half the room just goes dead. That's not random. There's a reason that happened when that guy walked in. They subconsciously people doing it, they don't realize it. But you can gain a whole lot of information. If I were to watch people approach the church and then just some random person tried to fit in with that crowd, you'll see it. That whole crowd will shift away from that one person because they don't know them. And you'll pick up on it and go, that was weird. Why'd they react that way to that guy? And then you won't pay attention to the crowd of 10. You'll pay attention to the one guy that made the whole crowd move. And now you've narrowed your numbers down to a more manageable number. So those are what we're looking at. I'm sorry, I had that wrong. So the geographics is how familiar they are with the area. How familiar are you with the church? The iconography. Oh, I butchered that word, but that's the graffiti. It's the graffiti, tattoos, stickers on your car. How many gun guys have gun stickers on their cars? Awesome. I mean, I like it because you know right away. You're an honor student. Anybody got honor student stickers on their cars? Telling everybody that type of stuff. One of the things I used to do with some churches, and I kind of got told it was being a little weird, so I stopped. We'd go on a break, and I'd go walk the parking lot, and I'd take pictures of people's cars, and I'd just ask, hey, whose student goes here? Or I'd call out like a guy's name and say, that's a nice ride you got. And he'd be like, how do you know what I drive? I'm like, well, your license plate says your name on it. Something else to think about if you're going to be on the security team, or you're going to be when you are actively engaged in some of these negatives, sometimes it's going to be a negative interaction. You're telling them where you live, how many kids you got, your wife. Try to keep the cars clean. Like, just know it's a billboard. So be careful what you're putting out there. So when we talk about body language, I guess I should skip to there are threat indicators, right? And there's exceptions to every rule. When we talk about these 6 domains, it's not any one thing. You need 3. 3 separate things, and then that's going to be a threat. So if I just have a limp, that's not enough. It's just a limp. But if I have a limp and I'm not moving my arm, and I don't want you to see my right side, now we're at 3. Or if I got a limp and I'm not moving and I'm not talking to anybody, and my face is kind of red, like I'm embarrassed, now I got 3. Now you're a person of interest. Now you're somebody we're going to keep a closer eye on. But there are exceptions to the rules, and there's 3 of them. A smuggling behavior. And these are the threat indicators that you don't get to sit on the sideline anymore. If you are here to actually protect the church, then these are the 3 things. If you see it, you have to do something about it. You got to take steps. Smuggling behavior. What do you think that would look like? Yeah. Hands in your pockets could be something, 100%. Hiding something, what would it look like, though? Go ahead.
Like I said, say it's 90 degrees outside and you got a trench coat on.
Yep. The wardrobe is part of it, and that one comes up a lot. And one of the things about the behavior analysis is understand that we are analyzing people's behavior, not their looks, not the clothes, because the winter thing. What if that guy is trying to come to church and that's just the best coat he's got? It could be that. So go ahead.
You're trying to fit in with a crowd.
Yeah, trying to fit in with the crowd. But what it's actually physically going to look like, you're going to be stiff. If I carry my gun, and concealed carry guys will tell you this all the time, if they're honest about it. When you're new, go ahead.
Constantly looking around at different people, wondering what their reaction is towards you.
Yeah, that's one of these 3. Yeah, checking your 6. So we'll skip to that real quick because it's a fast one. Who looks over their shoulders? There's 2 types of people. Good guys and bad guys. Your average everyday person probably don't check their surroundings as frequently as they should. But good guys that carry guns that are looking for bad guys do, and bad guys that are looking for good guys that are going to stop them look over their shoulder. So 100% right. That's one of them. So if you do see somebody approaching the church and they keep looking over their shoulder and they keep wondering who's looking, should be you looking. And just go up and now we go back to that decision making. You see them looking around, acting a little weird, like they're feeling like they're watched. Do you need to kill them? No. Isolate them? Maybe. Go up and say hi. Hear their story. You have no idea what their past is. Learn a little bit about it. Maybe they just had a bad breakup and they think, they got something going on and they're just super paranoid about it. I wouldn't give that a pass. If they came in here, I'd still would kind of keep an eye on them. But the smuggling behavior is going to be the long coat. You're not going to move your arm. You're not going to walk with a normal swagger. I'm not going to, if it's on my right side, I'm going to do everything I can to keep a building or an object between your eyes and my right side. Even if that means unnaturally, and this is where I say you have to watch how people approach the building. is if somebody's trying to hide something, they'll take a lap around the block to keep your eyes away from their right side until they get through the door. So if you see somebody park over here and all of a sudden walk 3 blocks around just to try to get through the front door, that would be weird. So pay attention to that. That's the smuggling behavior. They're trying to get something in. They're trying to be sneaky. If they don't want to be, you had mentioned it with the homeless, if they don't want to be separated from their bags, that's a big red flag. What's in the bag that you can't just leave sit there? That's weird. I got a backpack I carry every day for work. I could leave it in a hotel room. I don't care. But if I had my gun in there, I'm not going to leave it at the front desk somewhere. So it's a red flag. The other one is mission focus. And this just looks like they're not talking to nobody. They got their eyes dead set on a door and they're going. Oh. I was wondering what all the hooting was. But it's an unwavering, unbreakable focus on they're coming in the building. And they don't want a pamphlet. They don't want to say hi to you. They don't. And what it might look like, and one of the big red flags is, if they have to cross the road, they might literally almost get hit by a car because they're not paying attention to that much stuff. That's the level of focus we're talking. So if you ever did like just hear a honk and tire screech, man, I would be talking to the person that almost got hit by the car. Because maybe you missed how they were approaching it, and that might have been your opportunity. Maybe that drew your attention to them. And again, man, it's just a, hey, man, that was a close call. What's going on? And if they just want to blow right by you and get in here, I'd follow them. So those are the 3 that it requires you to step in and do something if you're going to be serious about doing this. You can't ignore it, because it's going to lead to something. Mission focus. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we went checking your 6, looking over your shoulder, checking what's going on behind you. So when it comes to observing human behavior and listening to your intuition, which is not as simple as just it's your gut feeling. It's there. You guys, it's pre-programmed in every single one of you guys. This is just to get you guys to pay attention to it and understand it better so you can use it as a tool, because it will help you. But I will say that women have the advantage in this realm, big time, because they listen to it way better than guys do. If it's a man and a woman walking towards something, and let's just say it's like a dark alleyway or something like that, women are more likely to just go, I'm good, and they're going to go another way. Guys tend to go, I want to know what's down there. Guys don't want to admit that they're scared. Women are okay being scared. They live with it more often. They're more natural in that. Or men, once we get that kind of like, oh, I'm feeling uneasy, I'm feeling scared, yeah, we get mad and then want to ignore it and go and do something silly. We got to get better at not ignoring that. Like if somebody makes you feel scared, I mean, we're not talking like a level of fear like you're going to have nightmares for the rest of your life. But that little shot of adrenaline, or that man, they just made me feel uneasy, that's fear, and it's okay. You're not going to take your man card for it or anything like that. It's just stop ignoring it and go, oh, I could take him. So half the people in the church can't, you just let them walk by. So follow that. Like I said, these things. And if kids, how many people have kids? 10-ish years old. They're going to narrow it down a little bit. I've got a 7-year-old that's got a level of honesty that'll cut you to the bone. Kids when it comes to this type of stuff, especially because they don't have a filter. They don't care about your feelings. And so if a child shows an unusual level of not wanting to be around somebody, How could you not ignore that? Man, but they'll tell you like the best greeter in the man, just put a kid up there and watch. And if he gets scared of somebody, boom, there you go. That's your guy. Because he's not going to hide it. He's not going to try to play tough guy. He's going to want out of that. So when your kids say, hey, you know, I'm scared. Now, if you've got, I mean, my kids are scared of heights or whatever, so that's normal. But if they're abnormally afraid of something, listen to it. Same thing with a spouse, somebody you're close with. Listen to it. Because it's not random. It's not, I would rather, because what's the worst case if you're wrong? Let's say you're just out in public, somebody gave you a weird feeling and you just wanted to leave. It's the worst thing that happens if you're wrong. Yeah, you got lunch to go. Oh well. What happens if you ignore them and you say, no, we're going to tough it out and we're just, you know, we're going to stay here. And then the active shooter kicks off and now you're stuck in the middle of that situation just because you wanted to ignore something that was there plain as day. I was telling a story. I actually got lunch to go one time. 3 guys walked in the restaurant. My wife and kids were with me. 3 guys walk in, sit down. Never seen them before in my life. Looked, the waitress came by. I'm like, I will take it to go. I am not staying here. I'm not. I got my wife. Like I said, how I handle things when I'm alone versus my wife and kids are with me, completely different, and that's okay. You should be. But later, those 3 guys were on the local news. Nothing kicked off in that restaurant. But all 3 of them were wanted, active felony warrants. And my wife was like, I told her, I'm like, I teach this stuff to churches. I'm not, it'd be embarrassing if I got caught in something like this. But there was no spoken words, and it was within seconds of them coming into that building. I was like, nope, don't want to be any part of any of this. So as it takes me hours, go ahead.
So outside of your instinct, how did you know? You saw those 3 guys.
But that's just it. That's the secret. It is your instinct. You're just choosing not to ignore it anymore. And once your instinct kicks off, you can really deep dive and watch them real close. So that instance was there was 2 guys that were showing very, very dominant male behavior. And there was one dude that just looked like a whoop dog, like he didn't want to be there for nothing. And I'm like, that guy sat between the other 2 guys, and I was like, first off, which guy sits in a booth 3 wide? 3 guys go to lunch, all 3 of them on the same booth? Never. Best buds, it's not happening. Somebody's sitting on the other side. So that's weird, right? This is back to the baseline. What's normal male behavior? Right? And you got 2 guys showing extremely dominant behavior, and 1 guy literally looking like he wanted to be anywhere on the face of the planet other than where he was. Leave. Don't be around it. You have no idea what it is, but why stick around to find out?
I know my experience in banking, the 4 times we caught people and like actually called the cops and the cops showed up and arrested them. Situations. Oh, I guess I can repeat that. Catching people at the bank. The 4 people that we actually called the cops on, and the cops showed up and arrested them. All 4 times, yeah, it was pure intuition. It was just like, something's off. And then your manager would be like, what? And you're like, I don't know. But then you start like looking into stuff and you're figuring things out. And then you're like, okay. And then you're like, and then you find out what's wrong.
Yeah.
It's like in the instant though. Otherwise, if you would have just cashed the check, for example, you could have done that in 45 seconds. But your instinct is like, something's wrong for whatever reason. So that's the first catch, I think, almost every time. And then you start noticing, oh, he was sitting there weird.
Yeah. Yeah, so your subconscious will pick up on it far, far, far in advance before the rest of you will, before you'll even start to acknowledge it. I forget the exact, but basically your brain is running on MS-DOS operating speeds, and your intuition is 5G, whatever the latest and greatest high-speed stuff is.
Yeah, so earlier you said you have 3 questions you ask yourself, like when anyone walks into a room,
Yeah.
and it's different for if you're with your family or you're alone, but what would be like markers for those? So like you said, the one is, do I need to kill this person? Do I need to isolate them? And I forget the third, but I've been in a situation here at church where I just sat next to someone because they were acting kind of weird. But what would be, besides, just instinct, what would be like markers for those things?
Okay, so yeah, so those are the three questions I ask myself every time I go anywhere. And it's fast, guys. I know when I'm talking about it and trying to teach and explain it, it sounds like a long drawn out thing. I went to Legoland yesterday. I walked into Legoland and I said, is there anybody in here I need to kill? Nope. Move on to the next one. Anybody here I need to isolate? Now that could be isolate them or isolate myself from them. Do I not need to be around them? Nope, nobody's weird. And then is there just some guy that just, maybe he's having a bad day, maybe, I don't know, just looks like he's mad or whatever. Now, out in public, I'm not going to go up and say hi to him. I just stop at the isolate and go, if I don't need to be around you, you don't need to be around me, and I'm going to distance. It's not my place to fix it. Some people might feel more inclined, but those are the three questions I ask myself every single time I go in somewhere different. If I go sit down at lunch, I walk into the restaurant and go, is there anybody here that needs to be killed? Nope. Okay. Anybody here I don't want to sit next to? Maybe. I don't want to sit next to a bar, listen to a bunch of drunks tell stories, so, that type of stuff. Where that threshold is they come in here with a gun. Yeah, 100%. Because that would be weird, right? How many people have walked into this church carrying a gun just openly in their hand? Anybody ever seen it? Yeah, so that'd be weird. Act on it. That's why we start, like I said, that's why we start where we start at. Because how long is it going to take your brain? If it took your brain that long to process me telling a story about a topless lady at a Catholic church, how long would it take your brain to go, holy cow, that's a gun? Oh, wait, I got to do something about it. Oh, now I got to draw my gun. All that time clicks off. The isolating them, how long is it going to take for me to interject? Like the isolating them, that happens quick. But where's my threshold as to when I'm going to step in? So if I were sitting there and I thought somebody was up to some wrongdoing, and let's say there's an altar call. Do you guys do altar calls in this? Okay, let's say there's an altar call and they're going to go up to the altar. 100% I'm following them. I'm going to go up there with them. Anybody gone up to the altar and had a bad time? So you're going to get something out of it one way or another. But you're going to be in a position that if that person were to do something, now maybe that person is coming up to be saved. Awesome. That's what we're hoping for. But if that person's up there to do something else, you're right there. I'm not good with scripture and stuff, but that story about Jesus trying to save that dude from a flood, sent 2 boats and a helicopter, and finally the guy died in the flood and was like, you didn't send anybody to help, so I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. That's the same thing as you being there, right? You pray about protection. You pray that you want God to help you out and give you the wisdom and give you the strength and the tools to do it. And if your intuition is telling you that that's off with somebody, and you sit in the pew and they come up here and do something, you were given all the tools, everything to fix it. And you didn't follow through on your end and just follow them up there. Now, where it goes from there, if they are going to get disruptive, I talked to some of you guys already about it. That's a big leadership versus congregational thing that you guys need to have that conversation of. A lot of the hesitation comes from you representing the church, not yourself. Like I said, I will do things in my house. My line at my house, it's a hard line. It's not getting crossed. At church, and I'm representing the church, and this isn't my house. Now I have to worry about, well, is pastor going to be okay with this? Is so-and-so going to be okay with this? Is this an acceptable? Where's that line at? Because it's them setting the line, not you. You and your training will set the line for what you're capable of. But they're, at the end of the day, they're the ones that have the hands on the leash of what they will and will not let you do. And that's that conversation that needs to be had of where is it acceptable. And there's going to be times, like I said, you're not going to be able to talk about every single situation that's popped up. And this is where having the after it's happened talk needs to be as brutally honest as anybody can take of what was done right, what was done wrong. Apologies can be made if they're necessary, because you're going to do things wrong, and that's okay. But You just got to have an avenue that, hey, we're talking about this. The fire department, how many times you guys run on a call and talk about the good, bad, and the ugly? Yeah. How much did you learn from that, though? Yeah. You'll learn more in that conversation if you just let people just check their egos at the door and just let it all hang out. You'll learn more in that 30 minutes than I could teach you in 10 hours. You'll learn about your coworker. You'll learn about your teammates, what they're capable of, what they're comfortable with. Because they'll come out and go, man, I really wasn't comfortable going down that road. And you're like, oh, man, I thought you were good to go. And now you know. You either help them get trained up and get better prepared for that, or just to not put them in that situation again. So those avenues are extremely important to have them. No, go ahead.
Are there instances when restraining a person, like a physical restraint, would be effective, not for an active shooter, obviously, but in maybe like the lady who was doing that, like if I restrained her and had other women like
If you know what you're doing.
clothe her,
100%. That's where I tell you, don't get in over your head. If you don't know how to fight, don't get in a fight. I mean, I don't know what everybody's training level is. But if you've never taken the training, okay, well, that's good. Hey, that's awesome. And that's something you're comfortable with and you know what you're doing, go for it. If you think it's the time to do it and it's the time to act. But if you carry a gun, do you carry a gun? Okay. If you do carry a gun and you're going to go hands-on on somebody, do they have a gun? Whose? Yours, yeah. You brought it to them. If you can touch them, they can touch you. So if you have not trained on how to stop somebody from taking your gun away from you, I would keep more than an arm's length away. I wouldn't let them be able to touch me. Something to think about. You guys that carry, anybody carry in the 6 o'clock position right in the small of their back? I'm so glad there's been less and less of that. Where do you guys carry at? Appendix? Okay. Right hip? You draw it sitting down right where you're at? Do you have to stand up to draw your gun? Think about it. If you do, but seriously, guys, so there's that Texas shooting that got caught on camera. The one guy that died is the guy that had to stand up. You know why he stood up? It goes back to what I was talking about with the training stuff. You train, you're going to do. How do you have to stand when you shoot your gun? Feet shoulder width apart, get a good stance, get a good base, do all this stuff. That's what he was standing up to do. Does a gun work just as good if you're sitting down as if you're standing up? Yeah, you don't need to stand up to do it. The guy comes in here and he's looking, because they're going to look for the first, right? They want the most time to do the evil things they're here to do. You stand up and say, I'm the good guy, shoot me. Oh, he's going to oblige you. But if you can do it from a sitting position, or even if you just get it out sitting without shifting a lot, this is stuff you can do on your couch. The couch is the best trainer because it actually like folds around you and it's actually harder to draw from your couch than a church pew. So if you can do it on a couch, you can do it on a pew. Anybody get in the argument about what brand is the best brand of gun? We spend a lot of time on that. At the end of the day, does it matter? It's a front sight, rear sight, and a trigger. Everything else is just branding. Right? What caliber? How many hours have been spent arguing about which caliber pistol to carry? Tons. You guys are already having it now. It's if you do this, it's not a real one. I don't care. I don't want to get shot with a 22. I don't care what it is. I don't feel like getting shot. So at the end of the day, carry what you're going to carry and what you're going to use. But let's quit wasting our time. I mean, look, if it's your buddies and you're just ribbing each other, great. But when it comes to, we're talking about it for real stuff, 9mm, 40, 45, name all the numbers. It doesn't matter. Is it good enough to get the job? Is it good enough to function when you need it to function? Yep, okay, good. Can you do it from a seated position? I know we don't need to square up and do all the, because guess what? The bad guy's not standing still. Bad guy's not going to square up to you. It's not the wild, wild west. We're not doing okay, at noon, meet me out back. That's not how it's going. So train to what you're looking to actually do. Set realistic goals. Like when I said words matter, I talk about killing, and I mean, I hate the word, but there's just no other substitute for it. So if you were gonna train, like you guys look like you guys go to the gun range. When you're shooting, what are you thinking about? Just rounds on target? Pretty much? Make your hits? What are you thinking about? Yeah. Have any of you guys ever gotten your heart rate up and pulled the trigger? Yeah. So everybody's got that little piece of paper. What do you think accuracy looks like? When we're talking about training here real quick, what do you think accuracy is? Like if I gave you guys 5 rounds from 7 yards and told you to shoot as fast as you could, how big of that circle do you think it need to be considered accurate? I'm just calling you guys out because you guys look like the gun guys here, so that's, I'm just helping you drive a point home. I'm not picking on you. But how big? 6 inches? Hold that piece of paper up to your chest. Hold that piece of paper up to any part of your body and tell me where you'd like me to put 5 holes in it. So you want to know, if people really want to know, if you're concealed carry and you want to know what you would do and what it would really look like if you were, and this is as close to an actual active shooter as we can get, right? We can't actually bring somebody in here and tell you to shoot you guys. That's really, really bad for business. But I can tell you what parameters to give yourself to know exactly how you're going to react in it. Why 7 yards? Let anybody guess that one. Anybody ever heard of the 21-foot rule?
It's the average gun range.
What's the 21-foot rule?
Oh, I don't know, it's the average length of the distance of an average gunfight.
That's true. There's something else. There's another key part of that. You probably know.
21 foot, if I have my gun in the holster and you have a knife, you're probably going to stab me before I can pull the trigger.
100%. Within 21 feet, somebody can go hands on you faster than you can draw that gun and accurately shoot it. I didn't believe it until I was in the Navy. We were taking a class and they gave us the little electric knives and we were playing with those. Had dummy guns and electric knives, the little taser ones that you get tased if you get stuck with a knife. Guy with the gun got tased every time.
I did that with some of my kids because they were trying to argue that couldn't happen. So I was like, all right,
Yep.
we'll do 21. We'll make sure this gun is empty and I want you to pull while I come and attack you. And every time, I was able to.
Because what's faster, action or reaction? Guy with the knife's going to go first because he's already at the disadvantage. He ain't going to wait till you pull the gun. That's why 21 feet, 7 yards, 5 rounds, fast as you can go. Yep. Yeah. 84% of the time, you're going to be within 21 feet of who you're trying to shoot. And you really want to know how good you are? Get your heart rate up to 160 beats a minute. Steady 100. I mean, you're sucking air at 160 beats a minute. You're going to be miserable. I'd be willing to bet most people at 160 beats a minute probably would have a hard time tying their shoe, legitimately. Because you can't, because your brain now has taken over and your brain is focused on breathing. Because your brain, right, we're going to go back to the limbic system. Your brain wants you to live. When you deprive yourself of that much oxygen, your brain is going to shift to you need oxygen. Well, you're trying to accomplish a completely another task. Whole nother thing. You're trying to shoot somebody. You're trying to live on that end. When your adrenaline spikes, you get that crossroads, that fight, flight, or freeze, and you're trying to do this, and your brain wants you to do that. So when you train with whatever it is, whether it's you want to run, you want to get out, that's great. That's why you need to train to where you're going to do that every time. It is going to be automatic. When you draw your gun, you're not going to think about where it is. You're not going to think about how level it's shooting, your trigger control, all that's out the window. You're not even going to feel your fingers. So you get that heart rate up to 160 beats a minute, 5 rounds as fast as you can, and you're going to get a real honest dose of just how good you'll shoot in a real situation. How fast you can. So if you shoot 5 rounds and it's this big, you held back. It needs to be 5 rounds barely on that piece of paper. And that's as good as you'll ever be. But that's as good as you are now. You can train up. But that's the real test. If you really want to know where you're at and what you need to work on, you get that heart rate up like that, and you try to do a simple task, you would be amazed on how hard it is to do that simple task when your heart rate is spiked like that and your brain is just saying, I just want air. You can't think about anything else. So, when it comes also to the human behavior, we talk a lot about the intuition, and then after, it's once you have that and then you start diving into it, then you start to get the details of, oh, hey, look, I was right. Oh, hey, look, that came out. That's why the intuition, when I say it processes information faster than even your eyes can see what's going on. And that's why I want us to shift our mindset from a default of inviting, which is great to have to a certain point. But especially for the greeters, for the security guys here in the church specifically, you need to have that proactive mindset of, I'm going to do something. This isn't about just letting people in. If you're a concealed carrier, you need to find where your line is. All right, so when you're training, if you're going to train to do any of this self-defense stuff, any level of self-defense, if I were training you and I said, okay, today we're going to train on when to engage and use deadly force. Sounds good. So I said, today we're going to learn how to accurately shoot a target and kill somebody. What's that do to your mindset if you're approaching that class? We talk. Does Missouri require concealed carry classes to get a concealed carry permit? Okay. Okay. So has anybody taken an actual concealed carry class? Do they tell you how to talk to a lawyer? Like, what do they say if you were in a shooting? Like, what to say? Just roughly, I'm not going to hold you to the quote. This isn't, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to. Yeah, but how do you word it? Like, what words? Yeah. Don't say that. Don't say I tried to kill him or I was. What's it usually? It's usually muddied up to I shot until the threat was no longer a threat, or I didn't feel this, or right? And that's great for that. And that is, you need to listen to your lawyer's advice, do all that. But when you're training, you're not training to not be scared. That's not the goal. You're training to end a life. That's what you're doing if you're carrying a gun. I mean, that's what guns are designed to do. I mean, we can do whatever we want with them, but that's what the purpose is. So that's why I say words matter, and the words you're using while you're training and what mindset you're getting yourself into while you're training, you'll be amazed on how much that'll ramp up how good you are. When that's what you're thinking about of, hey, I'm training to do this. Any of the concealed carrier guys, if you're not, I know it gets expensive. Another cheap trick, and it's free. Man, take you a target. You guys ever shot negative targets? You know what a negative, look by the face, do you know what a negative target is? Okay, take a target, you cut out the spot you want to hit. And the goal should be you don't have any marks on the paper. They should be sending it through the hole. Instead of pulling the trigger and looking to see where the bullet went, because we all do it. Whether you watch a new shooter, and you'll watch them look over the top of the gun to see where the bullet went. Take a negative and cut it out, and then you got no holes in the target. Now you know you're good. You're either that good or that bad that you didn't even get that close to it. But you already kind of know whether you are or aren't. That's free. Just try it. You make the hole as big or as little as you want. Like I said, though, usually a 10-inch, I I didn't know how many people were coming today. I usually bring a 10-inch plate, and everybody thinks they're getting free food out of it. But I send that home with them and say, that's your goal. That's their distance. That's your goal. I know this church seems like the team is just starting up, but what are the qualifications to be on the team? Like an active member of the team. If I say I want to come to this church, and I want to join up on the security team, I'm not here to dime you out.
Yeah, so we have the discipleship. So we have kind of a basic structure, or not a basic, we have a discipleship structure. So the very basic requirement is to finish the first set of discipleship lessons. So spiritual maturity, beyond that, we just ask you to show up on time. Oh, and also,
Well, and a clarification, as of right now, our security team does not and will not be the ones carrying. We're actually going to ask our security team not to carry when they're working security. They would only be carrying as an individual as of the near future, because we don't have additional qualifications and that like. So, yeah, just to be clear.
Okay, no, that's, because my church, you have to be an active member for a year. And I don't mean just pay your tithes and check the boxes and all that. It's when there's a off-campus event that you volunteer and you're showing interest in the church, right? Because we're trying to stop bad guys from getting in on the inside and learning the plan. And I mean, you're kind of going down a rabbit hole down there, but it shows active interest. Gun qualifications, you absolutely need to show some level of qualification you can use a firearm and not shoot yourself or somebody else that you're not trying to. And that's for everybody. I mean, and any level of self-defense, hands-on stuff, it's all great. Medical stuff, like I said, if you got guys in here that have taken medical training and you got a good Samaritan law, that's good enough. Basic stuff. Not to put you on the spot, but hey, I mean, you can stand up here just like I can. If I can do it, you can do it. And just teach the basics. Just enough. Just good enough till help gets here. We can take a break and we'll talk about what happens after and go over some other stuff. There's more questions about what bad guys act like. And take 10 minutes. Okay.
just tell those people to come in, that'd be great. All right, so thanks. I want to say thanks too to everyone for being here. Just the fact that this many people have the attitude of like, I want to be better at protecting God's people and protecting the church. That's super encouraging to me, and I know to the pastors, to the church leadership, that's encouraging, and so really thankful for that. Just so everybody knows, we've got another hour or so, depending on how long it goes. There's going to be lunch as soon as this is over. And then the plan is, so I think if this training has revealed anything so far, it's taught us a lot, but it's also revealed that we have a long ways to go. And that we need to continue, it's like you wouldn't take discipleship like lesson 1 and be like, I'm good. I never need to read the Bible again. I'm fine. It's this continual training, this continual thinking and talking. So the plan would be after this, we're going to put together some more trainings. It'll probably be more targeted and more specific, especially for the people that want to carry. But just be on the lookout for that. So before we get started, I do want to talk about the conceal carry kind of policy a little bit. But I'm holding these keys. These were found outside. So if you dropped or lost keys, come and find me. I'm in the back. So, we set this course up and we said, hey, if you're a person that wants to carry a weapon at church, you need to come to this course. One of the qualifications, one of the requirements to be able to carry would be, 1, come to this training. And then the second thing, one of the other qualifications would be that you put your name on a list. And what we're going to do with your name, what we're going to do with that is we're going to take that to the pastors, and the pastors are you're going to kind of vote on it and say, yeah, we approve of this person to carry, or we don't approve of this person to carry. Now, we understand that it's called concealed carry because you're concealing the weapon, right? So we're not asking you to wear a shirt to church that says, hey, I have a weapon in my pocket. That's not what that is for. What this is for is so that we all know each other. So we've already seen the scenario this morning where, hey, if somebody walks in and is shooting from over here, what if I don't know who the other people that are carrying are? Okay, now I don't know who the threats are. And so that's really one of the big reasons why we want to get that group established, is so that we can know each other, and then we can target and say, hey, in 3 months, we're all going to come together and we're going to do training just for that specific group of people. And so before the day ends, if you would find me to get your name on that list, I've got a clipboard in the back. We'll just put your name on it. That'll go before the pastors. You also need to know that just putting your name on the list and just getting approved doesn't mean that you're always going to be approved to carry a weapon. Okay, that is something that the pastors, the church leadership will continually look at. And if your behavior changes, if there's red flags, if there's a reason to take that right away, as a church, as private property, we do have the right, the church has the right to kind of take that right away. So I just want you to know what you're getting into. If you have questions about that, you can ask me. Mitch is in the back, Pastor Mitch. He's a little bit probably better versed on the actual policy than I am. But anyways, you can ask us questions. So keys, conceal carry, there's lunch later, and we'll get into our last session.
This happens a lot. Yeah, don't be discouraged by the stuff that we all know that you're not prepared for. The whole point of this is to learn what you don't know. To be, well, you don't know what you don't know until you figure it out, right? So it all seems overwhelming when you're trying to start something from scratch. You don't even know where what's right, what's wrong, what to believe, what not to believe. But you will be surprised in the heat of that moment that might, you remember I talked about dropping your magazine, not letting it hit the floor. You'd be amazed in that heat of that moment when that adrenaline spikes. Some of the things hesitations that will come into your brain. And one of the things that I was blown away by when I first started asking that question is how many people had not really thought about their spiritual salvation, but being willing to carry a gun into a church and use it if necessary. And the other thing to think about, and this is back to the guy thing, I'll speak for the guys on this part because we're terrible at it, is let's run the scenario, active shooter in the church, and you guys do everything 100% right. Bad guy's the only one that gets hurt. Nobody even gets hurt trying to leave. It's a phenomenal deal. You're the guy, you're the person that took the bad guy out. Everybody, banners, you're the hero, you're all this stuff, and you just eat it. You weren't okay spiritually. You're not okay after the fact, and you just bury it, because that's what guys do, just bury it deep. 2, 3, 4 years later down the road, you wind up taking your own life because you just can't live with it anymore. Did you win that gunfight? No, it just took you 4 years to lose it. So if you do have a situation, even if it's just a de-escalation thing that got super heated, and you see that somebody's just acting just a little bit, same thing with intuition, looking for the bad guys, look for it in your friends. How many have spouses that need to be told when the spouse is angry at them? You just tell the wife, husband, whatever, they're just mad. Oh, is everything okay? Yeah, they're fine, and you know they're not. Same thing's gonna happen to your buddy. If he was involved in a situation here and all of a sudden he's acting different. On a fire department, how many times did a guy run a call that it wasn't even a big deal, but for some reason that one just ate him up? Never would have thought they would have had an issue with it, but they act different. You guys got to pay attention to those too. With this is your family, these are your friends, these are your people. If they start acting different, maybe they weren't even involved in it. Maybe just the situation, they stayed in the back row and just saw it, and it bothered them that much. And you notice that change in them, you need to, just like you do with the bad guy, you need to proactively seek out ways to fix that situation. Find out what's going on. And as for you guys that are here that are okay with taking this task on, then you need to eat the party of the humble pie and check your ego and go, no, I'm not okay with this. This is bothering me. It doesn't make you weak. I think it takes a bigger man to say he's bothered by something than it does to bury it. I can bury it all day long and not talk to anybody about it. But confronting those emotions and dealing with it is, you got to. And if you're a buddy, if you consider yourself a real friend to somebody and you see that change, you won't back off. And what are they going to do? They're already not talking to you. What are they going to do? Get mad and not talk to you more? But you can rest peacefully at night. Because let's say that is your buddy and you just ignored everything. 4 years later down the road, he takes his life. And now you got to reflect on all the stuff that you saw that changed, that you chose to ignore. And now you got to eat that. Where does it end? Who's the first one to speak up and go, man, this is tearing me up? So those are always my final two. Like, I really want you guys to understand that it's a very, very personal thing when it comes to deadly force and the use of deadly force. Now, another thing that seems to come up and confuse, like I said, I'm going to speak real broadly on this because I'm not 100% clear on all the little do's and don'ts of Missouri state laws. But when is it okay to use deadly force? When's it acceptable? Yeah. Of what? There's a tagline to that. A little bit more. When their life is in danger or in threat, imminent threat, or serious bodily harm. Right? Okay. And this is where everybody gets hung up. What's serious bodily harm? Everybody knows what imminent, if I'm pointing a gun at you, you know. But what's serious bodily harm? Yeah. The actual definition of it, you're right. But the actual definition of it is something that creates a permanent disability. You're permanently disabled at some level. It doesn't specify, that's where it gets you on the gray area. It doesn't specify a finger, an arm, or a leg. But a baseball bat to an arm is considered serious bodily injury. A car. That's where you guys, and this is where everybody talks about the gun, and that's to me, the gun is the black and white. That's the easy decision to make. It's the serious bodily harm that hangs us up. And that is where you need to start thinking about where your line is and where you're going to interject, where you're going to walk away, when you're not going to get involved. Because what if it's a fist fight? One guy can fight, other dude clearly can only take a punch. Can he do serious bodily harm with just his fist? Would you be okay shooting somebody that was just pummeling somebody? I mean, I'm just asking the questions. I'm not here to tell you, yeah, you can. But here at a church, I know a fist fight seems crazy, but so did a topless lady running down the deal and breaking statues. So a 6-year-old pulling a gun and shooting a teacher. I'm not here to put fear into you, but there's nothing that your brain is going to come up with scenario-wise that hasn't already happened in real life somewhere. So you think about these scenarios, and maybe if it's a fist fight, you're like, oh, I'm not going to go deadly force, but I'm going to get involved. Maybe you know the guy, you know one of the people. Maybe you don't know any of them. The biggest training tool that we have is our brains, and it's an actual tool that they encourage. Run yourself through the scenario. You don't need the big professional training. Run yourself and just sit there and think, okay, if it happened in church, this is kind of what I do, and then this is, when you start using your brain to picture that stuff out, then when you actually get in it, like I said, you're going to revert back to what you thought about. So I know fire department stuff, when you look at a building, you already kind of have a pre-pictured in your head of what's on the other. You don't know what's on the other side of that door, but you kind of have in your brain, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to go right, or I'm going to go left. And we can argue for days about whether you go left or right, but but you know what I'm saying, right? You got it in your head. So now you're just reacting. You're not thinking about it. You're going. Those are tools that you guys have. Ladies, in a parking lot, you're going grocery shopping. How many of you have your arms completely full? Like arm bags, both hands. Kids, you tack a kid on there. Now your arms are full. Biggest thing I tell my wife, the biggest deterrent you have on the face of the planet, just look over your shoulder real quick. You go back to what we were talking about earlier. Who looks over their shoulders? Good guys and bad guys. Simple, before you get to your car, just look over your shoulder. And if that bad guy was following you out that door and he thinks that you saw him, he's going to walk away. 90% of the time, he's going to go, oh, nope, not that one, because they might identify me. And that simple glance over your shoulder that you could have been looking at the stars, who cares? They think you saw them. They got a guilty conscience. Same thing walking through the church doors. If they think that they're being watched, and this is where we go back to the very beginning of you never know what worked. You never know how many times that yellow safety vest stopped somebody from coming in this church and causing a disruption just because they thought they were being watched. You'll never know. And it's hard. One of the things that we did, we had a situation, and this is another tool you guys can use. And it's a little bit harder here because of the way you guys are set up, but maybe a safety vest would be a close second to what I had done. There was a gentleman sitting in the car in the parking lot for an unusual amount of time. It was just gotten to that point where enough people had seen it, were concerned about it. And he got out of his car and he was walking towards the church. And it was timing, divine intervention, call it what you want. This regular elderly woman that was mobility impaired shows up, and we always help her to her seat. And I was one of the open carry guys that day. And I told the guy that I was with, I said, hey, watch how he reacts to seeing me walk out the door. And all I did is walk out the door. I didn't even look at him. Didn't even care. I'm helping her. I help her out of her car. I help her get her stuff. And I turn around and walk right back in. That guy got in his car and left. You never know. So use these tools that you know, hey, I know human behavior a little bit better. And this is where the practice, I've given you the tools. If there's something that you want to learn about, that little synopsis bad words. The description under the titles of those books give you a very quick rundown of what that book is going to be about. So if there's something that I've intrigued you that you want to dive deeper into learning, those books, I've listened to them all on audiobook too, if you're an audiobook person. It just sounds like a college professor lecture. It's not miserable to listen through. So I encourage you, right? Because practice is what you're going to do after I leave. The training just gives you the information on what to do. Practice is on you guys. Yes, sir.
Yes, to follow up to what you just said, I think about 15 years ago, a young man came into the church I was going to, Kansas City Baptist Temple. And at that time, we had a ministry toward police officers, and they was in the lobby and everything, and I happened to be part of the hospitality. Later that day, that same man went into the Jewish synagogue and shot up the synagogue in Overland Park. And I believe the reason why he didn't do that there at the church because he saw police officers there. Now, fast forward here, that's why we have safety people with the vest as a deterrent.
Yeah, it's 100%. That's what your ultimate goal is, to deter it. You don't. This isn't a macho, I want to see what I'm made of competition. You don't even want it, just don't want nothing to do with it. I have trained very heavily in firearms, and I promise you the last thing I ever want to do is be in a gunfight, ever. I've done the simunition rounds. That's painful enough. I'm good. I don't want anything to do with it. Having a police car, that's, man, if there's a guy, and that's where more training comes into play. You guys are just kind of getting this started. One of the things that I recommend, and I've not found a city yet that's not willing to help you out, reach out to your police department. Tell them, hey, we're trying to get this started. Can you come talk to us about how you'd respond if there was an active shooter? What can we do as a church to better prepare for this emergency situation, right? Because on our level, we're doing just enough. The medical world, you call it, you're waiting for a higher level of care. We're at the very, very bottom of that list. Like you're not happy with what we're having to do, but we're trying to get you on a helicopter to here. Same thing with security. You guys, bare bones, this is as low as it gets basically with nothing. Help's coming. Higher level of security, higher level of protection, better tools, they're coming. Reach out to those guys and say, what can we do to make sure our good guys don't get shot by your good guys? What's your response going to look like? And you would be amazed on how much they're willing to reach out. Reach out to your fire department. They'll come out, and I almost guarantee they'll do a CPR class. Red Cross does a great basic first aid stuff. And these are all tools that are free, mostly free or very, very affordable. And get certified in that type of stuff. Because, like I said, when they're coming, you're going to be dealing with injuries, things like that. Guess what? EMTs aren't coming in until the cops do. So the faster that you can get things set up for when law enforcement shows up and they can do what they need to do faster, well, now the higher level of medical care is coming faster. But you won't know what to do until you reach out to your police department. They'll have a training division at some level, and they'll come and they'll walk and they'll talk to you and go, and those are your people. I can't tell you what your police department's going to do. I can tell you they're going to do something. I guarantee they have a plan for an active shooter or what they're going to do and when they'll consider something secured or not secured. So if you're going to be working with those guys, just reach out. And it could just be something as an email while you guys are setting up your policies and go, hey, the police department said us this. Let's mold our policies to fit that this is what we're going to do. We're going to get in line with those guys. Fire department, same way. You know, they're going to have an idea. They have trained on mass casualties, which that's what it's going to go out as, regardless. No matter they'll figure out the details later. But everybody in the area is coming. What can you do to make that more effective? because when it comes to medical stuff, minutes equals hours as far as life-saving stuff. So if you can get that guy through that door just 2 minutes faster, easily be the difference between life or death for somebody. And just reach out to them and go, hey, here's our layout. What can we do for a triage center real fast? How hard would it be to do triage training? Just honestly, I think new people are better at triage than people that have a high level of medical training, because it's basically like black, like you're freaked out, okay, that's this. Oh, I'm not as freaked out, then it's a lower level of issue. So just go off of that and go, hey, if you're not this scared, it's not that bad. Well, anybody can do just a basic thing and start setting the scene to be successful on the back end. Because you can't shoot the bad guy until he's the bad guy. So you have to let the incident happen. But you've mitigated at this point if you watch human behavior and you start watching where people are coming from and their behavior, and looking for the guy that's not, and it's not what he's wearing, it's not walking right, doesn't want to show you this, or he's just like, man, just like, what's his deal? Go figure out what his deal is, because he probably has one. And then the tail end of that that's where I guess you say, so for some guys it starts to get boring, of first responders, police, fire, EMS, clear a parking lot, that type of stuff. The kids, what are you going to do if something goes on down there? Having a plan. And these plans, they just need to be, I'm one of the training guys on our fire department. I keep it to 3 steps. Anything beyond 3, it's not standard anymore. By the time you've hit the 3rd thing, now you're reacting to what's going on. So for your kids downstairs, if there's an active shooter up here, what are they going to do? There should be an ABC that is just immediate, unspoken. These things are going to happen, regardless. After those 3 things have been established and been done, now you can start to slow things down and go, okay, it's here, kids need to shift there, whatever it might be. Your building layout, your staff personnel, that's going to dictate, that's something that you guys need to come up with together. For us, where our church was laid out, we had it very easy. I talked to you guys about it already a little bit, that it was a funnel in and out to where the kids were at. Once they were in the classrooms, there was one way in. There was like 80 ways out, but everything was locked down with crash bars, one way in. Are the kids going to lock down? Are they going to leave? And that's your guys' building setup are a lot different. Personally, I don't recommend staying in the building if it's an active shooter. Like I've already warned my kids' school, they're starting to do the active shooter stuff at his school, and I told them, like, you just need to set him down somewhere, because I've trained him to throw a chair through the window and run. Like, you break the window, get out of there and go. So luckily they haven't had it yet, or I haven't been called to the office because he threw something through the window to leave. But these are the things that you need to get right, because you don't want to sit there and come up with a plan for the kids after it happened. It's not going to work. You're going to lose a kid. The possibilities are endless. Parents, if your kid was down there and there's an active shooter up here, 90% of you guys are going to be worried about your kids first. And if there's no plan for it, you're not going to know. And show me a more irrational person on the planet than a scared parent to where their kid is. And good luck calming them down while you're dealing with all this other stuff. So just as long as they know, hey, when this goes, it's just like a fire drill, an earthquake drill, natural disaster drill, just knowing, hey, if this happens, we're going here. And then that's what you're going to do. And then everybody knows, and that'll calm the parents down. That'll calm everybody else down. They'll get there. It's still going to be a high level, high intensity thing. But you look at some of the pictures or some of the videos of that school shooting that they weren't letting parents into that school. I am blown away in Texas that they didn't just run that blockade and go into that school. But you saw how irrational and how angry those parents were. Those are just, you think about it, those are just parents. You put whatever state you want, but those are you guys. You stop me from getting to my kid when there's an active shooter deal, I'm going to hurt some feelings. Like, I'm not going to listen. Your policy doesn't matter to me at that point anymore. I don't care. So giving parents that level of comfort, I think, is a great thing, especially in this building. I understand the layout makes it a complicated issue. And I don't even know what the other building looks like, but I guarantee if something happens here or there, the opposite building should lock down. Like, I mean, immediately. Like, that shouldn't even be, the minute they catch word, I mean, just shut it down. Because you don't know. If it is an issue with the church, and usually it's not more than, like you had said, more than one person helps, but usually there's only one trigger person. Situation like this, if they know it's 2 buildings and they kind of know your guys' routine, because more than likely, and this is not to get you guys to start looking at your neighbors like, who's it going to be? But more than likely, they've been in the building before. And when you start thinking about that, some people freak out. I find comfort in that because that means I've already seen you. I've already watched you once. You might have been good once to get by me. You're not going to be good twice. I'll notice a difference. And you'll notice that difference because if they have that guilty conscience on their hands and they know they're going to do something bad. Because we talk a lot about mental illness, and you can use that, and I'm sure on a lot of parts of it, there's something behind it to a certain degree. I think a lot of it's just a facade. It's a very violent world out there, and people do not learn how to cope. And this is just the, I'll show you moment. Nobody with a rational mind would naturally walk up anywhere knowing they're getting ready to take that amount of life. They will not look normal doing it. They won't. So what do? Ignore it or act on it? That's up to you guys. Like I said, practice is what you do after I leave. And whoever you have up next, whatever other next training it is that y'all do, the practice is what you guys choose to do. I keep pointing at you guys because I know you're the gun guys, but that's good, but practice, yeah, go shoot a negative target and tell me you didn't become a better shot. Put a t-shirt on a target. You really want to step up your game, put a t-shirt on it. Looks completely different than the sight picture. Easy to shoot paper. I mean, just anything with a design on it, just it gets that mental, all right? Because it's all in our head. We're all ingrained to do it. We've all been doing it. You guys have all been listening to your intuition your entire lives. You've just been programmed to ignore it because you don't want to offend anybody. I will live with offending anybody in this room over letting one bad guy through the door because I was worried about what they might think about me. I mean, if you're wrong, I mean, let's really play it out. You meet a guy out there and you think something's up and you're wrong. What's the worst thing that happens if he's wrong? If you're wrong and he gets just irate mad, what's the absolute worst thing that could happen? Complain to a leader in the church that they didn't like what you said or how you approached something? Okay. You were wrong. Just humble yourself, admit it, and chances are, though, you probably weren't. You might have been wrong in that moment. Maybe that day he didn't want to do anything. Comes back, might be different. But your intuition told you that something was up. So something was up. They can scream. And usually I found my history of dealing with the general public, the louder they scream, the wronger they are. They're screaming just to make noise because it's a distraction mechanism. It's not an actual, there's no evidence of it. Now, if they're very calm and rational when they're talking to the leadership about what you did, I'd start to worry a little bit. But even then, you're just wrong. But if you're wrong about letting them go by because you didn't want to offend them, it could be somebody's life on the other side. And when you guys are out there and you're accepting this role as being, whether it's I don't want to put it on the greeters. The greeters, you guys, absolutely, it's, in my opinion on the greeters, it's on your shoulders if you don't tell anybody that something was off. I think greeters and safety or security, whichever word you want to attach to it, are two completely separate ministries. And I think greeters have the responsibility to bring it to somebody's attention that something was wrong. It is safety or security's minute. It is your job to do something about it, not to look and go, oh, I thought you were going to. If you think for 1 second to yourself, I thought somebody else was going to do it, you're wrong. Either should have been you doing it or you going and making sure somebody did it. Or go with somebody and go do it together. But you can't do this. Well, somebody should do something. You're absolutely right. They should. But if there's no other questions, that's what I got for you guys. I'll take questions for days. Well, till about 4 o'clock I gotta go, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I got a couple questions. One, Ernesto asked me to ask this. So when it comes to, okay, so open carry is legal. And so in the situation that we get anyone who wants to just come in, or let's say someone comes in visiting the church and has just a revealed, like an open carry, pistol on their hip, what would be, my initial thought is, hey, welcome, no, that can stay in the car. What would our approach be, just coming from the guys wearing the vests standing out in the parking lot?
Yeah, well, most guys that do something like that they're not gonna be aggressive when you talk to them about it. I found most gun guys aren't when you talk to them about stuff like that. They're not gonna get heated. They're not gonna, because they know, like, look, you got a gun on you. So if anything happens, now it happened and you have a gun. So if somebody calls the cops, it's just magnified even worse. But if your policy is, unless you're on the team, no guns, I would check them where they're at and go, I'm sorry, sir, but there's no guns allowed unless you're part of the team. You leave it in your car. We've got, and maybe, help them relax a little bit and say, we've got patrols that walk the parking lots, so it's safe in your car. Even though if he's a responsible gun guy, he'll have somewhere to put it. But they're either looking for a reaction out of you. You see it on YouTube stuff now all the time. People are just walking around open carrying just to see what the reaction is. So there's that possibility, which I just wouldn't engage them. If you do come across a guy like that starts video recording you, and you're just trying to say, hey, our church's policy is this, just go, hey, we have a PR department. I recommend reaching out and talking to them. Don't even engage them in conversation. Even if you don't have just look, the church has an email. I've been talking to somebody here. It's got a way to talk to people. You just say, hey, reach out through that, and they'll be happy to answer any questions about policies. I'm not allowed to talk to the press, because that's what they're trying to use as the scapegoat, is their press. So just flip that on them and go, we don't talk to the press, you have to talk to a pastor, and here's how you can reach them. But your gun has to stay in the car. And if they don't come into the church, do you think they were really going to come into the church anyway? I mean, it's kind of that.
I guess my question is to Jeff and the leadership. Open carry is not, we don't allow open carry, is that correct, on church property? Is that our policy?
So under current Missouri law, I have it pulled up. In order for you to have a firearm on our property, because this is not public property, it's private property, you have to have permission of the church leadership. So if somebody walks up that is not a member of this church, that has not gone through this, subsequently not gone through this training, and has a weapon on their hip, a gun or a large knife, they will be asked to leave, put it in their car, etc. If that escalates, obviously, you can call the police, or you can call, depending on how it escalates, I guess, you can call leadership, pastoral leadership, or other leadership, ministry leadership in Jeff's case. Personally, I'd prefer Jeff to take care of it than me. But no, but they would not be welcome here. We have the right, because this is private property, to restrict people's ability to carry a firearm on these grounds. So the permission we're allowing in here through this process that we're developing is to allow concealed carry. We would ask no one, even those who've gone through the process and approval, to open carry. We would ask you not to do that. The only time we would allow open carry is if we hired a police officer, hired a security guard, hired somebody with specific training to have open carry. And we do that. Some of you may have noticed during Mission Focus, every year we hire a off-duty police officer, sits in a car, walks around. Obviously, he has permission to open carry. Did that answer it? Yeah. Okay. There's a question.
How do you recognize when someone is concealing and carrying?
So if they're really new at it, it's really easy. They'll just keep tugging at their shirt, thinking it's hanging up on everything, and they'll feel like there's a spotlight. They'll not, like if it's on your right side, you'll see they might hold their arm stiffer. They don't want it to sway as much. Or if they go to do like an act of like bending over, you'll see like they'll try to move in a way to stop you from seeing that side. It'll be very unnatural that they'll want to do anything to expose that. Your guys that carry day in and day out, they're going to be the harder ones to find, but they're not your threat. Guys that carry a gun every single day are generally not bad guys. And they generally carry it in a proper holster. Your bad guy's probably just gonna like tuck it in a belt, or he might be the first time he's using that holster, and so it's gonna feel very unnatural to him. But yeah, I usually pick it out because everybody thinks, you hear the word printing, and it's where the side of the gun kind of pokes the shirt out in an unnatural way, and everybody seems to think that just because it does that a little bit, when you're carrying a gun, it feels like that thing, like you're gonna run into people with it. It really does. And so, it's that obvious that you could go as far if you notice somebody doesn't like anybody on their, a particular side. Like, it took me a long time. When I'm carrying a gun, I walk with my wife. She does not go on my right side, ever. 'Cause that's the side my gun's on. If she's there, I can't get it. We can't hold hands. We can't. So you'll start to see that, like, it's just an unnatural, like, man, it's kind of weird that they're always doing that. But yeah, the not moving something, or a gimp, or they're always tugging, they're always fixing and adjusting, even though there's nothing to fix or adjust. That's the biggest tattletale.
Deadly force is justified. If you kind of map that out, you're seeing a lot of headlines where somebody's getting shot in the back. Even with the stand your ground law, they feel a threat, they feel imminent danger, and it's just not holding up in court. What are the signs if you pull your weapon and you're not going to shoot a warning shot, when you pull that trigger, you're justified doing so?
So for me, I will only speak for myself. Like I said, when it comes to what we're talking about with that's a very intimate decision. For me, the being shot in the back, I used to think that you weren't allowed to shoot anybody in the back, and I took a course where we shot ammunition, and almost everybody wound up getting shot in the back. Because if you shoot somebody and they're just falling, and you still pulled the trigger, like, who's to say what happened when? Now, the legal term is you have to stop shooting when the threat is over, or you're no longer in fear of your life. Well, your level of fear might be different from mine, or yours from mine. So you shoot until you're not, at whatever level of fear that it made you want to shoot that person, you stop shooting when you don't have that level of fear anymore. And I don't care if it's 2 rounds, 2 magazines, it doesn't matter. Now, as far as the actual, where's my line at? For me personally, in my car, it's anything inside that window is my line. When we get within an arm's reach of each other, and let's say just me and you are having an issue, and we're verbal from this distance, dude, you can scream at me till the cows come home. I don't care. But when you get within an arm's reach of me and your demeanor starts to change, then that fear of my life or fear of serious bodily harm, because I don't know what you're capable of, and I've got my wife and kids with me, and you see how it starts to stack up. So the biggest thing is it's how scared are you, and is somebody's life in imminent danger? And it can be your own life. And if you feel that somebody is presenting an imminent danger to your life, the way the law is written, you're justified. Now, how your courts, like a court here in Missouri or Arkansas, is going to see it, or Texas, is going to see it completely different than New York or California. So when you're reading these stories, understand the context of where that story happened at. Because you look at that, the Kenosha kid, whatever his name was, I don't remember what his name was, he walked. But you put that kid in a California court, he ain't walking. So go ahead.
I would just say with that Houston, Texas, conservative state, there was an issue where there was a robbery took place at a business. The guy put his gun down, was walking out of the restaurant, shot and killed in the back, and he's convicted of that. It wasn't justified. So a situation like that, you may be scared, something just took place, but he's no longer an active threat as he's put his gun away and walked away.
Yep, and once they put that gun down, that threat, that risk of death to you or serious bodily harm to you is over. And once they have disengaged, you have to disengage. So if a guy came in here and just shot one person and turned around and ran out, you cannot chase them out the door. That's law enforcement land out there. I always say it's self-defense, not stuff defense. So if they're breaking into a car, I'm not shooting somebody over breaking into a car. Not my car, not my stuff, not my problem. Even if it is my car, I've got my valuable stuff on me. Anything that he wants in that car, it's on me. So that's where a lot of people, especially if you're getting new to this firearm thing, a lot of people think it's a fix-all problem solver. All it does is create more problems. It solves a quick problem, and it creates 10 more. And that's where I say you need to figure out your line. The law says if you're in fear of imminent danger or serious bodily harm or death, you're justified.
Hi, so this is like private property, and I was curious about the legal rights that we have as a congregation to physically either restrain someone or to remove someone from the property, since this isn't really, this isn't my property. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the restraining them is a little bit difficult. If they're trying to leave, you got to let them leave, otherwise it's kidnapping. So you can't they can't do something in here and you can hold them till the cops get here. You can't do that. As far as they're being disruptive and you're trying to trespass them off the property, you can absolutely do that. I would just go ahead and call the cops and have them en route here and let them know, hey, we just threw said person, whatever. That way they're aware of it. They don't necessarily need to come or will come. But
what about the technicality of actually putting your hands on somebody? I'm thinking of the woman that's just up there. She seemed like someone that would need a grab and remove type of thing. What type of right does a congregation have on a hospitality team to do something like that?
That would be where the leadership sets the policies for the safety or security team of what they're with the. She might try to sue, but if she was never hurt, there'd be nothing of it. There's nothing to go on there. When you talk about going hands-on with somebody, that is a very, very blurry line as to, especially if they haven't engaged you actively. If you tried to just gently grab them by their arm and they come at you, you're kind of defending yourself at that point. But I kind of lean on the churches to set their own. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we actually had a situation like that in first service maybe 3 years ago. It's been a couple of years. There was a gentleman back here that was causing trouble, and several guys came and approached him and basically just got close and said, you need to leave, you need to leave. Sam kept preaching, maybe invitation time, I can't remember, but there were enough guys that just basically made a wall. He was not going to go any further into the congregation and just kind of ushered him out. And none of them, to my understanding, view, participation, ever laid any hands on him. There was just enough guys going, you will leave, you will leave, you will leave, you will leave, and got him out into the lobby, and then he left. And of course, somebody called somebody called the police. So I would say, kind of use that same concept of fear. If he, it's a different situation if somebody is swung and punched somebody. I'm gonna tackle him, right? I'll take whatever legal risk there is if he's hurt someone, or the person's hurt someone. But if they're just loud, obnoxious, causing trouble, you kind of need to meet it with the same level of response. With that being said, we would never ask anyone to go out of their comfort zone to do that. So the Lord will lead, trust the Holy Spirit. If you don't feel comfortable engaging in that situation and you're the first one to engage, ask someone else. Get more people involved. Somebody maybe that comes in with a cooler head than the situation has escalated to. So.
I will add that when you do reach that threshold of hands-on, and that's the option, that's where you're thinking about going. That book about when violence is the answer, it's the only answer. That's talking a lot about hands-on stuff. If you're gonna go and somebody needs to be physically grabbed and physically removed from this church, if you're gonna grab them, you better grab them with everything you got. Don't leave anything on the table. Like if you're gonna do it, just both feet off the diving board and go. Because back to the action is faster than reaction. If you go at 50% and they come back at you at 100% and you weren't ready for it, now you're on the bad end of that deal. But if you just come at them with everything you got and they weren't ready for it, your odds dramatically increase with that. But again, that is not something I would recommend anybody doing if you don't know what you're doing. Because you could actually seriously hurt somebody or seriously get hurt yourself if you really don't know. I'm not saying you got to be black belts, but you should have a basic understanding of just what you're doing.
Yeah, so after the training, we can all just go out to the alley back here and, give it a shot.
Draw numbers.
So I'm in the college and young adults security team, and we're in the other building.
Okay.
But there's just about everybody brings a backpack, and there's a lot of new faces in the college and young adults. We run around 200 to 250, and there's usually about 50 faces I don't recognize.
Yeah.
So is there anything that I can be on the lookout for when somebody has a backpack and I don't recognize them, they're a little shifty, won't talk to anybody, what
Yeah.
can I...
The backpack situation, easiest thing we talked about with the homeless guys, just have them set it somewhere and walk away from it. If they don't want to walk away from that backpack, I want to know what's in the backpack. Because if it's just school books, pens, like who's worried about that going away? But if you got something, regardless of whether it's a knife, drug, whatever it might be that you don't want it, a lot of cash, it could be one of any things, but like you said, 50 students. And so if I had 50 kids come up and just set their backpack down and walk away, and one of them was looking like they were having a panic attack over leaving that bag up here, there's your one.
Well, people have panic attack if you ask them to leave their cell phone. So.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So
but maybe that's just it. Maybe he just left his cell phone in there, but by you taking the time to engage and go, hey man, are you good leaving your bag there? Like what's going on? He's like, oh man, I left my phone in there. Let him go get his phone. And now you've eliminated, instead of just blowing it off, right? That's what we always come back to. Stop blowing it off and actively find out, why is this person having this reaction that nobody else is having? And if it's something as simple as a cell phone, then okay, cool. And if he wants to dodge the question and start getting shifty about it, well, all right, well now there's something more. Now there's something to bring another person in on and go, hey, something's up. And like you said, with the intuition stuff, you won't know right away until you start digging. The intuition gives you that first piece of that pie that says something's wrong. As you dig, you'll get the details and go, oh, holy man, that's crazy. So if there was a kid that you were worried about, I'd just try that exercise. And do it with all the kids. Don't do it like you can't single him out. Just like one day say, hey, we're going to do something different today. Just, put all your backpacks over here. We're going to go over here. And you'll see real quick which ones have an issue with their bags being over there. So, yeah.
Okay. So hopefully I word this correctly. So downstairs we have our children's ministry going on. So like, obviously Precious Cargo down there, a lot of the nursery kids from infancy, I think, to kindergarten age, if I stand corrected. But let's say someone's upstairs and they're causing a ruckus or being a distraction or being an active threat, and they try to make their way downstairs where children are. Considering that fact, would a person then potentially suffer legal repercussions if they were to restrain them, considering that there's children, and nursing mothers downstairs?
Yeah, I would say if they don't have a kid down there and they have no business being down there, that's a big red flag. Take into account that they probably just had a very heated situation up here and maybe they're just trying to go and get their kid. I would probably tell them, hey, just wait here and we'll go get them. Don't let them, try to keep them as far from going down that rabbit hole as possible. If it is, hey, just stay up here, we'll go get your kid, don't worry about it, and then just bring them. I don't know how checking out your kid goes. A lot of churches do it differently. But I would try to avoid them getting down there because now they might get into it with a staff member, which the staff member down there has no idea what happened up here. Just knows, hey, this parent's really fired up over something. So I would just try to keep them away from the rest of the kids. If they didn't have a kid down there, it could be, like if it were me and I just got that raging mad about something, man, I could have just walked out the wrong door thinking it was a closet or something. I don't know how to get out of the building. So just maybe a course correction there of, hey, if you're trying to find the exit, it's this way. It's not down there, it's that way. And let them storm out. So.
Okay, I have a question about what happens if there is no immediate threat to my life or I don't have immediate threat of bodily injury. Let's say the guy walks to the pulpit, down this aisle, and he's pulling a gun. He's with his back to me. I'm not in immediate danger, but anybody else on the front potentially is. Is there a legal red line I'm not allowed to cross, or is it okay for me to engage?
You're okay to engage because other people's lives are. You are allowed to use deadly force to protect your life or somebody else's life that is in threat, the immediate threat or of death or serious bodily harm. So that would be, if you don't, I would say you'd be 100%. A jury of your peers is going to sit there and go, he pulled a gun and you tackled him. Get a street named after you.
Okay, and what if I use deadly force against this guy? I pull my gun.
I would say it's justified.
Okay.
I would. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice. But given the circumstances that if I were in a church and that is what I witnessed, I might wait just because of my training and again, this comes to our skill levels and our training and our comfort levels, right? If I were to see that, I'm drawing my gun. There's no doubt about that. If he just had it down, I might not. But the minute that muzzle started to move past that floor, 100%. Because I would like to hope, and this is where we keep talking, we go back to the church thing and letting God do his thing. I would pray that he's just coming up here to put it on the altar and walk away. Chances are he's not. But I would give him that opportunity until that muzzle, he better not, not 5 degrees. Like, you better hold that thing straight down. Then that's my line. So, thought I saw one more. Oh.
I like what you said at the beginning of the seminar. You was talking about how de-escalating a situation and the spiritual aspect of it, and it got me to thinking, if I've come in contact with a person that's, say, loud or whatever, my first notion is to get them out of here to calm the service. But I should think about not only that, but dealing with his soul.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, that made me think, and I like that, hey, our main priority is what? His soul. And maybe talking to him in a calm manner and say, okay, I don't know what you're dealing with, but I know who has the answer.
Yeah, show me a more powerful statement of somebody up here screaming, and then by the time you're done talking to them, they're giving their life to God because you took the time.
Right.
You didn't escort them out and just throw them out right away. You just said, hey, even if it's just right here in the front pew, just, hey, just sit here and talk to me.
Right.
And let them keep service going and just, hey, just talk to me.
I throw that out when if he got a gun, though.
Put that away. Let's.
Last year, I mentioned to you that my son was confronted with a gun. He had let this guy go, and it was somewhat friendly, and the guy said I had tools in my car that I have to return to the company. So he goes out to the car with the guy, and then they opens the trunk, and he pulls the gun out, and he's waving it around. And my son de-escalated him, which I was very proud of him, because he explained to the guy, you have a future. There's other jobs. This is maybe not the job suited for you. And he finally talked him down. The guy never put the gun away. But when, of course, when my son went back in the building, he said as they're walking in the building, he kept saying, don't shoot me in the back, don't shoot me in the back. And he got in the building, of course, he called the police. Well, he was arrested for brandishing a weapon. But it was de-escalated. And he didn't do any hard time or anything, but he didn't shoot anybody. So I like that concept of de-escalating, and it worked.
Yeah, it's a very real thing, and it's just taking the time to hear somebody out like that. He just connected with him. Said, hey, man, I know what you're going through, and it's not the end of the world. And who knows what it stopped? You never know. And that's the biggest issue. Like, there's a question over there. It's a race.
You go.
No. You first. Me and
Okay, cool. Just as a comment for the hospitality team that sees someone that they just look a certain way, to just bring them to somebody that they trust that can handle the situation. Like, we don't need to kick anybody out for looking a certain way, but it's like, if they look that way, with maybe like introducing them to somebody that would be able to handle them in a sense, and that person will bring them to that place. That's just my only comment on that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I've never grown up in a rough neighborhood. And so if you see somebody that looks like they have, find somebody that did grow up in a rough neighborhood that can connect with them on that level, speak the language, understand the language. I can't. And I mean, I could fake it, but they'd read right through it. So use the tools of the people that you have around you to get the outcome you're looking for. Just because you're not that guy that time, you're looking for the win. So, go ahead.
For our church or for like concealed carriers, do you recommend or know of any like lawyers, insurance because if you have to shoot somebody, court fees, court costs, lawyers, all that stuff. Is there anything that you know of or recommend to protect an individual or like the church from having to have that burden? Yeah. Even though if they did the right thing, they're blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I was just talking to the gentleman in the back that I carry USCCA insurance. It's gun rights insurance, self-defense insurance, whatever nomenclature you want to throw to it. It's got tons of free training. I know if you actually use the free training they offer up, you'll get your money's worth out of it every month for what it's worth. But I forget, the package I have is like $3 million of coverage. That's lawyer fees, court costs, bail, replacing your firearm, lost wages for work. They offer up the free trainings. They've got it started out pretty cheesy. It's gotten a lot better. Their free trainings are actually very useful. They've got a good online forum that you can dig in and ask questions. They've got lawyers in specific states that you can ask specific questions to where you live. And basically the way it would work is if you're in a self-defense situation, you You want to flip a coin or whether you want to call the cops or your lawyer first. I'll let you guys decide what you would do. But you call this number, and you can actually have somebody else call it for you because you're given a number, like an identification confirmation type number, and they will reach out and they'll post your bail probably before you're booked and be on the way of getting you out the door. For me, it covers me wherever I go, and it covers my house and anybody that lives every day in my house that's under the age of 21, I believe. So my wife, when she's at home, even though if I'm up here on the road and something were to happen at the house, she's covered. Now, if she leaves the house, she'd have to have her own policy, but my house is covered. And then I'm covered wherever I go. I talked to the gentleman in the back, they offer group rates, church stuff. If you guys want to look into that, that's an administrative side of it that they can do that for you. But I definitely, there's Texas Law Shield is another one, and just find what you're looking for out of those are the two big ones. Is there another one, guys? USCCA and Texas Law Shield are the two big ones that I am aware of. And for me, where I travel, Texas Law Shield didn't cover it. USCCA covers everywhere except Washington and New York, I think. And that's because they outlawed that type of insurance. It's not because they don't cover it, it's because the state made it illegal to carry it. So definitely recommend it if you're gonna do something like that every day. It's pretty affordable. I think it's like $20, $25 a month for me. But I don't have the base. I don't want to misspeak on their prices, but their low level deal was less than $20 a month last time I checked for a basic coverage, and that was still like $1 million in coverage. So it's not that cheap, you know. So.
This is going back to what Chan said about for hospitality. Those who serve on hospitality that are ladies, I know Michaela is real good about this. I really appreciate this. When there's a suspicious guy comes in, she has them come sit with Arnold. You know your leaders, you know your deacons in the church. If there's someone that you're not sure about, point those people out. You know, when you come in, see where they're sitting at. So if someone comes in the church, you can sit that guy by someone that's a leader in the church. So, yeah.
You're not a bad person because somebody made you feel weirded out by them. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes them a weird person. So just listen to it and don't put yourself in that situation. The one disclaimer about that reading list I haven't covered, I meant to cover it when I was going over it. When you read that, if you choose to read that book that says what everybody is saying, understand that is a very hard book. I meant to put an asterisk by that. That's a very difficult book to read. You are reading people's intimate details of violent crimes that they were victims of. And some of those stories are a horse pill to swallow. So just great lessons learned, fantastic. I think that honestly, God works through that book to prevent a lot of bad stuff from happening, but those are very real and hard stories to listen to. So approach that one with caution. The Left of Bang one is a very scientific, that's a nerdy book. So if you don't really like big, long Latin scientific words, take that one with caution. That's that one's. That it? Any other questions?
Yeah. So I'll probably get made fun of by the gun guys. But what's the so like the non-lethal or the less lethal, like Byrna or just pepper sprays and so on? Does that would that have any space in what?
100%. I carry pepper spray. Like when I was doing church security, I carry pepper spray because look, man, I don't want to get punched in the face either. Like I don't, I really don't. And so I would much rather pepper spray somebody than get hit. And I promise you, if you've never been pepper sprayed or around pepper spray, they will not want to. They might want to fight more, but they won't know where you're at. And the one thing I do highly caution though with pepper spray, and anybody that's been around it knows, that if one person uses it, everybody gets a taste of it. So just know that I always say nobody wins in a pepper spray fight because everybody's gonna suffer. And so just be wary if you're around small children or elderly folks or anybody that has any sort of breathing or respiratory issues, that is gonna magnify their medical condition exponentially. I'm not saying don't use it, just saying that if you see somebody with that level of reaction, you know, it just know, just like when you're shooting a gun, know your surroundings. Don't spray pepper spray over a baby carrier. The kid's gonna get it, so don't do it. But I highly recommend it, and there's tons of stuff on the market out there for it. As far as I know, it's 100% legal. So I think the ramifications of using pepper spray versus a taser are different. I don't recommend tasers for anybody. They're effective, but you still got to get close. So I think some of the pepper sprays now are 20, 25-foot stream. A taser, I don't care what you do, it's only your arm length. You're still... So unless you go high dollar, you want to get what the police carry. Those guns are they're pricey though. I just do pepper spray. And you'd be surprised too if you pulled out pepper spray. You'll know if somebody's been pepper sprayed. If you pull out pepper spray on them and they've already experienced it once, that'll take the fight right out of them quick. It's like when the police let the dogs loose on people. If they've already been bit by a dog, they will give up quick. They've already had a taste of it and they don't want a second one. So if it is people that, you know, you kind of start, a little questionable, we might have done some jail time. If they've done jail time, like real jail time, they've probably experienced pepper spray on some level. They'll see it and go, I'm good. Don't want that. Because the police, once they get back in the back of the patrol car, it's not like they're going to get it washed off. It's going to be burning them for hours. It's going to be miserable. You'll get to go home and take a cold shower and be less miserable a lot faster. So that's all I got.
I have also heard that if you have pepper spray, then you want to make sure that the wind isn't blowing towards you. So you don't end
100%.
up pepper spraying yourself.
Yeah,
So.
you absolutely will. And pepper spray is not fun. It's miserable. I would rather be tased than pepper sprayed. I've experienced both, and I'll take a taser over pepper spray all day. So. That's it. Thank you for your time.
All right. So, man, Josh, thank you for your time. Man, thank you for sharing your expertise with us. So, lunch is up. So just a couple quick things. First of all, if I could charge you guys are all here. You guys are all paying attention. I mean, we all heard the same stuff. Man, we need more people to step up to the plate. And I know that a lot of you are already burning the candle at like 3 ends, but man, please, we could use help on the safety team with the vests. We're gonna need some people that are non-vest wearing people that are just paying attention. So, you know, Chance with your team, bro, like, you know, the guys on the inside, man, we need more of you. One thing I just want to encourage you all to understand is, so what I tell the safety team guys is, so you're all members of the church. It's you have the right to make the decision whether or not someone is fit for coming into the building. And so if there's any question whatsoever, if you don't feel comfortable making that decision, find somebody who you think can. And then, like Chance had said also, if we have somebody that's just off and there's any question, park them with someone who seems like they can handle themselves. And just whether that's, you know, like a lady that's no clothes on, that's happened, or at least, no pants on. Stick them with another lady, and so that way we can handle all of that. But if I could just, encourage you all to continue to step up with us. And I'm going to pray for lunch, and we're going to go eat lunch. And yeah, praise God. Lord, thank you for this. God, Lord, I just pray that you would now bless this food, bless this time. God, help us to digest everything we've learned and take this training and now put it into practice. God, please don't let us be guilty of just letting this fall to the ground, but let us put it into our daily and definitely the times where we gather into practice. And I pray all this in your Son's holy name. Amen.